Part 1. Sir Oliver Tressilian. Chapter 1. The Huckster. Sir Oliver Tressilian sat at his ease in the lofty dining room of the handsome house of Panero, which he owed to the enterprise of his father of lamented and lamentable memory, and to the skill and invention of an Italian engineer named Bagnolo, who had come to England half a century ago as one of the assistants of the famous Torrigiani. This house is such a startlingly singular and Italianate grace, for so remote a corner of Cornwall deserves, together with the story of its construction, a word in passing. The Italian Bagnolo, who combined with his salient artistic talents of quarrelsome, volcanic humor, had the mischance to kill a man in a brawl in a Southwark tavern. As a result, he fled the town, nor paused in his headlong flight from the consequences of that murderous deed until he had all but reached the very ends of England. Under what circumstances he became acquainted with Tressilian, the elder, I do not know, but certain it is that the meeting was a very timely one for both of them. To the fugitive, Ralph Tressilian, who appears to have been inveterately partial to company of rascals of all denominations, afforded shelter, and Bagnolo repaid the service by offering to rebuild the decaying half-timber house of Panero. Having taken the task in hand, he went about it with all the enthusiasm of your true artist, and achieved for his protector a residence that was a marvel of grace in that crude age and outlandish district. There arose, under the supervision of the gifted engineer, worthy associate of Messer Torrigiani, a noble two-storied mansion of mellow red brick, flooded with light and sunshine by the enormously tall mullioned windows that rose almost from base to summit of each pilaster facade. The main doorway was set in a projecting wing, and was overhung by a massive balcony, the whole surmounted by a pillared pediment of extraordinary grace, now partly clad in a green mantle of creepers. Above the burnt red tiles of the roof soared massive twisted chimneys in lofty majesty. But the glory of Panero, that is, of the new Panero begotten of the fertile brain of Bagnolo, was a garden fashioned out of the tangled wilderness about the old house that had crowned the heights above Panero Point. To the labors of Bagnolo, time and nature had added their own. Bagnolo had cut those handsome esplanades, had built those noble balustrades bordering the three terraces with their fine connecting flights of steps. Himself had planned the fountain, and with his own hands had carved the granite faun presiding over it, and a dozen other statues of nymphs and sylvan gods in a marble that gleamed in white brilliance amid the dusky green. But time and nature had smoothed the lawns to a velvet surface, had thickened the handsome boxwood hedges, and thrust up those black spear-like poplars that completed the very Italianate appearance of that Cornish domain. Sir Oliver took his ease in his dining room, considering all this as it was displayed before him in the mellowing September sunshine, and found it all very good to see and life very good to live. Now no man has ever been known so to find life without some immediate cause, other than that of his environment, for his optimism. Sir Oliver had several causes. The first of these, although it was one which he may have been far from suspecting, was his equipment of youth, wealth, and good digestion. The second was that it achieved honor and renown both upon the Spanish Main and in the late herring of the Invincible Armada, or, more aptly perhaps might it be said, in the herring of the late Invincible Armada, and that it received in the 25th year of his life the honor of knighthood from the Virgin Queen, the third and last contributor to his pleasant mood, and I have reserved it for the end, as I account this to be the proper place for the most important factor, was Dan Cupid, who for once seemed compounded entirely of benignity, and who had so contrived matters at Sir Oliver's. Wooing a mistress, Rosamund Godolphin ran an entirely smooth and happy course. Sir Oliver took his ease in his dining room, considering all this as it was displayed before him in the mellowing September sunshine, and found it all very good to see and life very good to live. Now no man has ever been known so to find life without some immediate cause, other than that of his environment, for his optimism. Sir Oliver had several causes. So then, Sir Oliver sat at his ease in his tall, carved chair, his doublet untrussed, his long legs stretched before him, a pensive smile about the firm lips that as yet were darkened by no more than a small black line of mustachios. Lord Henry's portrait of him was drawn at a much later period. It was noon, and our gentleman had just dined, as the platters, the broken meats, and the half-empty flagon on the board beside him testified. He pulled thoughtfully at a long pipe, for he had acquired this newly imported habit of tobacco drinking, and dreamed of his mistress, and was properly and gallantly grateful that fortune had used him so handsomely as to enable him to toss a title and some measure of renown into his Rosamund's lap. By nature, Sir Oliver was a shrewd fellow, cunning as 20 devils, is my Lord Henry's phrase, and he was also a man of some not inconsiderable learning. Yet neither his natural wit nor his acquired endowments appear to have taught him that of all the gods that rule the destinies of mankind, there is none more ironic and malicious than that same Dan Cupid in whose honor, as it were, he was now burning the incense of that pipe of his. The ancients knew that innocent-seeming boy for a cruel, impish knave, and they mistrusted him. Sir Oliver either did not know or did not heed that sound piece of ancient wisdom. It was to be borne upon him by grim experience. And even as his light, pensive eyes smiled upon the sunshine that flooded the terrace beyond the long, mullioned window, a shadow fell athwart it, which he little dreamed to be symbolic of the shadow that was even falling across the sunshine of his life. After that shadow came the substance, tall and gay of raiment, under a broad black Spanish hat decked with blood-red plumes. Swinging a long beribboned cane, the figure passed the windows, stalking deliberately as fate. The smile perished on Sir Oliver's lips. His swarthy face grew thoughtful. His black brows contracted until no more than a single deep furrow stood between them. Then slowly the smile came forth again, but no longer that erstwhile gentle pensive smile. It was transformed into a smile of resolve and determination, a smile that tightened his lips even as his brows relaxed, and invested his brooding eyes with a gleam that was mocking, crafty, and almost wicked. Came Nicholas, his servant, to announce Master Peter Godolphin, and close upon the lackey's heels came Master Godolphin himself, leaning upon his beribboned cane, and carrying his broad Spanish hat. He was a tall, slender gentleman, with a shaven, handsome countenance, stamped with an air of haughtiness. Like Sir Oliver, he had a high-bridged, intrepid nose, and in age he was younger by some 2 or 3 years. He wore his auburn hair rather longer than was the mode just then, but in his apparel there was no more foppishness than is tolerable in a gentleman of his years. Sir Oliver rose and bowed from his great height in welcome, but a wave of tobacco smoke took his graceful visitor in the throat and set him coughing and grimacing. "I see," he choked, "that ye have acquired that filthy habit." "I have known filthier," said Sir Oliver composedly. "I nothing doubt it," rejoined Master Godolphin, thus early giving indications of his humor and the object of his visit. Sir Oliver checked an answer that must have helped his visitor to his ends, which was no part of the knight's intent. "Therefore," said he ironically, "I hope you will be patient with my shortcomings. Nick, a chair for Master Godolphin, and another cup. I bid you welcome to Panero." A sneer flickered over the younger man's white face. "You pay me a compliment, sir, which I fear me 'tis not mine to return to you. Time enough for that when I come to seek it," said Sir Oliver, with easy, if assumed, good humor. "When you come to seek it?" "The hospitality of your house," Sir Oliver explained. "It is on that very matter I am come to talk with you. Will you sit?" Sir Oliver invited him, and spread a hand towards a chair which Nicholas had set. In the same gesture, he waved the servant away. Master Godolphin ignored the invitation. "You were," he said, "at Godolphin Court but yesterday, I hear." He paused, and as Sir Oliver offered no denial, he added stiffly, "I am come, sir, to inform you that the honor of your visits is one we shall be happy to forego." In the effort he made to preserve his self-control before so direct an affront, Sir Oliver paled a little under his tan. "You will understand, Peter," he replied slowly, "that you said too much unless you add something more." He paused, considering his visitor a moment. "I do not know whether Rosamond has told you that yesterday she did me the honor to consent to become my wife." "She is a child that does not know her mind," broke in the other. "Do you know of any good reason why she should come to change it?" asked Sir Oliver, with a slight air challenge. Master Godolphin sat down, crossed his legs, and placed his hat on his knee. "I know a dozen," he answered, "but I need not urge them. Sufficient should it be to remind you that Rosamond is but 17, and that she is under my guardianship and that of Sir John Killigrew. Neither Sir John nor I can sanction this betrothal." "Good lack!" broke out Sir Oliver. "Who asked your sanction, or Sir John's? By God's grace, your sister will grow to be a woman soon and mistress of herself. I am in no desperate haste to get me wed, and by nature, as you may be observing, I am a wondrous patient man. I'll even wait." And he pulled at his pipe. "Waiting cannot avail you in this. Sir Oliver, 'Tis best you should understand. We are resolved, Sir John and I. Are you so? God's light. Send Sir John to me to tell me of his resolves, and I'll tell him something of mine. Tell him from me, Master Godolphin, that if he will trouble to come as far as Panero, I'll do by him what the hangman should have done long since. I'll crop his pimpish ears for him by this hand. Meanwhile, said Master Godolphin wettingly, will you not essay your rover's prowess upon me? You, quoth Sir Oliver, and looked him over with good-humoured contempt. I'm no butcher of fledglings, my lad. Besides, you are your sister's brother, and 'tis no aim of mine to increase the obstacles already in my path. Then his tone changed. He leaned across the table. Come, now, Peter, what is at the root of all this matter? Can we not compose such differences as you conceive exist? Out with them. 'Tis no matter for Sir John. He's a curmudgeon who signifies not a finger's snap. But you, 'tis different. You are her brother. Out with your plaints, then. Let's be frank and friendly. Friendly? The other sneered again. Our fathers set us an example in that. Does it matter what our fathers did? More shame to them if, being neighbors, they cannot be friends. Shall we follow so deplorable an example? You'll not impute that the fault lay with my father, cried the other, with a show of ready anger. I impute nothing, lad. I cry shame upon them both. Swoons, swore Master Peter. Do you malign the dad? If I do, I malign them both. But I do not. I no more than condemn a fault that both must acknowledge could they return to life. Softly, softly, good sir. There's no call to go softly. Ralph Tressilian was a dishonor, a scandal to the countryside, not a hamlet between here and Truro, or between here and Helston, but swarms with big Tressilian noses like your own, in memory of your debauched parent. Master Godolphin got to his feet in a passion, and his chair crashed over behind him. Sir, he blazed, you insult my mother's memory. Sir Oliver laughed. I make a little free with it, perhaps, in return for your pleasantries on the score of my father. Master Godolphin pondered him in speechless anger, then swayed by his passion, he leaned across the board, raised his long cane, and struck Sir Oliver sharply on the shoulder. That done, he strode off magnificently towards the door. Halfway thither he paused. I shall expect your friends in the length of your sword, said he. Sir Oliver laughed again. I don't think I shall trouble to send them, said he. Master Godolphin wheeled, fully to face him again. How? You will take a blow. Sir Oliver shrugged. None saw it given, said he. But I shall publish it abroad that I have caned you. You'll publish yourself a liar if you do, for none will believe you. Then he changed his tone yet again. Come, Peter, we are behaving unworthily. As for the blow, I confess that I deserved it. A man's mother is more sacred than his father. So we may cry quits on that score. Can we not cry quits on all else? What can it profit us to perpetuate a foolish quarrel that sprang up between our fathers? There is more than that between us, answered Master Godolphin. I'll not have my sister wed a pirate. A pirate? God's light. I am glad there's none to hear you, for since her grace has knighted me for my doings upon the seas, your words go very near to treason. Surely, lad, what the Queen approves, Master Peter Godolphin may approve, and even your mentor, Sir John Killigrew. You've been listening to him. 'Twas he sent you hither. I am no man's lackey, answered the other hotly, resenting the imputation, and resenting it the more because of the truth in it. To call me a pirate is to say a foolish thing. Hawkins, with whom I sailed, has also received the accolade, and who dubs us pirates insults the Queen herself. Apart from that, which, as you see, is a very empty charge, what else have you against me? I am, I hope, as good as any other here in Cornwall. Rosamond honors me with her affection, and I am rich, and shall be richer still ere the wedding bells are heard. Rich with the fruit of thieving upon the seas, rich with the treasures of scuttled ships and the price of slaves captured in Africa and sold to the plantations, rich as the vampires glutted with the blood of dead men. Does Sir John say that? Asked Sir Oliver in a soft, deadly voice. I say it. I heard you, but I am asking where you learnt that pretty lesson. Is Sir John your preceptor? He is. No need to tell me. I'll deal with him. Meanwhile, let me disclose to you the pure and disinterested source of Sir John's rancor. You shall see what an upright and honest gentleman is Sir John, who is your father's friend, and has been your guardian. I'll not listen to what you say of him. Nay, but you shall, in return for having made me listen to what he says of me. Sir John desires to obtain a license to build at the mouth of the Fowl. He hopes to see a town spring up above the haven, there under the shadow of his own manor of Arwenack. He represents himself as nobly disinterested in all concern for prosperity of the country, and he neglects to mention that the land is his own, and that it is his own prosperity, and that of his family, which he is concerned to foster. We met in London by a fortunate chance, while Sir John was about this business at the court. Now it happens that I, too, have interest in Truro and Penryn. But, unlike Sir John, I am honest in the matter and proclaim it. If any growth should take place about Smithick, it follows from its more advantageous situation that Truro and Penryn must suffer, and that suits me as little as the other matter would suit Sir John. I told him so, for I can be blunt, and I told the Queen in the form of a counter-petition to Sir John's. He shrugged. The moment was propitious to me. I was one of the seamen who had helped to conquer the unconquerable armada of King Philip. I was therefore not to be denied, and Sir John was sent home as empty-handed as he went to court. Do ye marvel that he hates me? Knowing him for what he is, do ye marvel that he dubs me pirate and worse? 'Tis natural enough so to misrepresent my doings upon the sea, since it is those doings have afforded me the power to hurt his profit. He has chosen the weapons of calumny for this combat, but those weapons are not mine, as I shall show him this very day. If you do not credit what I say, come with me and be present at the little talk I hope to have with that curmudgeon. You forget, said Master Godolphin, that I, too, have interest in the neighborhood of Smithick, and that you are hurting those. Soho, crowed Sir Oliver. Now at last the sun of truth peeps forth from all this cloud of righteous indignation at my bad Tressilian blood and pirate's ways. You, too, are but a trafficker. Now see what a fool I am to have believed you sincere, and have stood here and talked with you as with an honest man. His voice swelled, and his lip curled in a contempt that struck the other like a blow. I swear I had not wasted breath with you had I known you for so mean and pitiful a fellow. These words, began Master Godolphin, drawing himself up very stiffly, are a deal less than your deserts, cut in the other, and he raised his voice to call, Nick, you shall answer to them, snapped his visitor. I am answering now, was the stern answer. To come here and prate to me of my dead father's dissoluteness and of an ancient quarrel between him and yours, to bleat of my trumped-up course of piracy and my own ways of life as a just cause why I may not wed your sister, whilst the real consideration in your mind, the real spur to your hostility, is not more than a matter of some few paltry pounds a year that I hinder you from pocketing. A God's name get you gone. Nick entered at that moment. You shall hear from me again, Sir Oliver, said the other, white with anger. You shall account to me for these words. I do not fight with hucksters, flashed Sir Oliver. D'ye dare call me that? Indeed, 'tis a discredited and honorable class, I confess it. Nick, the door for Master Godolphin. Chapter 2. Rosamund. Anon, after his visitor had departed, Sir Oliver grew calm again. Then, being able in his calm to consider his position, he became angry anew at the very thought of rage in which he had been, a rage which had so mastered him that he had erected additional obstacles to the already considerable ones that stood between Rosamund and himself. In full blast, his anger swung round and took Sir John Killigrew for its objective. He would settle with him at once. He would so, by heaven's light. He bellowed for Nick and his boots. Where is Master Lionel? He asked when the boots had been fetched. He be just ridden in, Sir Oliver. Bid him hither. Promptly, in answer to that summons, came Sir Oliver's half-brother, a slender lad favouring his mother, the dissolute Ralph Tressilian's second wife. He was as unlike Sir Oliver in body as in soul. He was comely in a very gentle, almost womanish way. His complexion was fair and delicate, his hair golden, and his eyes of a deep blue. He had a very charming stripling grace, for he was but in his 21st year, and he dressed with all the care of a court gallant. Has that whelp Godolphin been to visit you? He asked as he entered. Aye, growled Sir Oliver. He came to tell me some things, and to hear some others in return. Ha! I passed him just beyond the gates, and he was deaf to my greeting. 'Tis a most cursed, insufferable pup. Art a judge of man law. Sir Oliver stood up booted. I am for Arwenack to exchange a compliment or two with Sir John. His tight-pressed lips and resolute air supplemented his words so well that Lionel clutched his arm. You're not? I am. And affectionately, as if to soothe the lad's obvious alarm, he patted his brother's shoulder. Sir John, he explained, talks too much. 'Tis a fault that wants correcting. I go to teach him the virtue of silence. There will be trouble, Oliver. So there will, for him. If a man must be saying of me that I am a pirate, a slave dealer, a murderer, and heaven knows what else, he must be ready for the consequences. But you are late, Law. Where have you been? I rode as far as Malpas. As far as Malpas? Sir Oliver's eyes narrowed, as was the trick with him. I hear it whispered, what magnet draws you thither, he said. Be wary, boy. You go too much to Malpas. How? Quoth Lionel a trifle coldly. I mean that you are your father's son. Remember it, and strive not to follow in his ways, lest they bring you to his own end. I have just been reminded of these predilections of his by good Master Peter. Go not over often to Malpas. I say, no more. But the arm which he flung about his younger brother's shoulders and the warmth of his embrace made resentment of his warning quite impossible. When he was gone, Lionel sat him down to dine, with Nick to wait on him. He ate but little, and never addressed the old servant in the course of that brief repast. He was very pensive. In thought, he followed his brother on that avenging visit of his to Arwenack. Killigrew was no babe, but man of his hands, a soldier and a seaman. If any harm should come to Oliver, he trembled at the thought, and then almost to spite him his mind ran on to calculate the consequences to himself. His fortune would be in a very different case. He reflected, in a sort of horror. He sought to put so detestable a reflection from his mind, but it returned insistently. It would not be denied. It forced him to a consideration of his own circumstances. All that he owed to his brother's bounty. That dissolute father of theirs had died, as such men commonly die, leaving behind him heavily encumbered estates and many debts. The very house of Panero was mortgaged, and the moneys raised on it had been drunk or gambled or spent on one or another of Ralph Tressilian's many lights o' love. Then Oliver had sold some little property near Helston, inherited from his mother. He had sunk the money into a venture upon the Spanish Main. He had fitted out and manned a ship, and had sailed with Hawkins upon one of those ventures, which Sir John Killigrew was perfectly entitled to account pirate raids. He had returned with enough plunder in specie and gems to disencumber the Tressilian patrimony. He had sailed again and returned still wealthier. And meanwhile, Lionel had remained at home taking his ease. He loved his ease. His nature was inherently indolent, and he had the wasteful, extravagant tastes that usually go with indolence. He was not born to toil and struggle, and none had sought to correct the shortcomings of his character in that respect. Sometimes he wondered what the future might hold for him should Oliver come to marry. He feared his life might not be as easy as it was at present, but he did not seriously fear. It was not in his nature. It never is in the natures of such men to give any excess of consideration to the future. When his thoughts did turn to it in momentary uneasiness, he would abruptly dismiss them with the reflection that when all was said, Oliver loved him, and Oliver would never fail to provide adequately for all his wants. In this undoubtedly he was fully justified. Oliver was more parent than brother to him. When their father had been brought home to die from a wound dealt him by an outraged husband, and a shocking spectacle that sinner's death had been with its hasty, terrified repentance, he had entrusted Lionel to his elder brother's care. At the time Oliver was 17 and Lionel 12, but Oliver had seemed by so many years older than his age that the twice-widowed Ralph Tressilian had come to depend upon this steady, resolute, and masterful child of his first marriage. It was into his ear that the dying man had poured the wretched tale of his repentance for the life he had lived and the state in which he was leaving his affairs with such scant provision for his sons. For Oliver he had no fear. It was as if with the prescience that comes to men in his past, he had perceived that Oliver was of those who must prevail, a man born to make the world his oyster. His anxieties were all for Lionel, whom he also judged with that same penetrating insight vouchsafed a man in his last hours. Hence his piteous recommendation of him to Oliver, and Oliver's ready promise to be father, mother, and brother to the youngster. All this was in Lionel's mind as he sat musing there, and again he struggled with that hideous insistent thought that if things should go ill with his brother at Arwenack, there would be great profit to himself, that these things he now enjoyed upon another's bounty he would then enjoy in his own right. A devil seemed to mock him with a whispered sneer, that were Oliver to die, his own grief would not be long-lived. Then in revolt against that voice of an egoism so loathsome that in his better moments it inspired even himself with horror, he bethought him of Oliver's unvarying, unwavering affection. He pondered all the loving care and kindness that through these years past Oliver had ever showered upon him, and he cursed the rottenness of a mind that could even admit such thoughts as those which he had been entertaining. So wrought upon was he by the welter of his emotions, by that fierce strife between his conscience and his egotism, that he came abruptly to his feet, a cry upon his lips. Vade retro Sathanas. Old Nicholas, looking up abruptly, saw the lad's face waxen, his brow bedewed with sweat. Master Lionel, Master Lionel, he cried, his small bright eyes concernedly scanning his young master's face. What be amiss? Lionel mopped his brow. Sir Oliver has gone to Arwenack upon a punitive business, said he. And what be that, Zur? Quoth Nicholas. A grin spread upon the weather-beaten countenance of Nicholas. Be that so? Marry, 'twere time. Sir John, he be over long, I tongue. Lionel stood amazed at the man's easy confidence and supreme assurance of how his master must acquit himself. You have no fear, Nicholas. He did not add of what, but the servant understood, and his grin grew broader still. Fear? Lackaday! I bane a fear for Sir Oliver, and don't be afeard. Sir Oliver be home to sup with a sharp-set appetite. 'Tis the only difference fighting ever made to he. The servant was justified of his confidence by the events, though through a slight error of judgment Sir Oliver did not quite accomplish all that promised and intended. In anger, and when he deemed that he had been affronted, he was, as his chronicler never wearies of insisting, and as you shall judge before the end of this tale is reached, of a tigerish ruthlessness. He rode to Arwenack fully resolved to kill his calumniator. Nothing less would satisfy him. Arrived at that fine embattled castle of the Killigrews, which commanded the entrance to the estuary of the Fowl, and from whose crenels the country might be surveyed as far as the Lizard, 15 miles away, he found Peter Godolphin there before him, and because of Peter's presence Sir Oliver was more deliberate and formal in his accusation of Sir John than he had intended. He desired, in accusing Sir John, also to clear himself in the eyes of Rosamund's brother, to make the latter realize how entirely odious were the calumnies which Sir John had permitted himself, and how basely prompted. Sir John, however, came halfway to meet the quarrel. His rancor against the pirate of Penarrow, as he had come to dub Sir Oliver, rendered him almost as eager to engage as was his visitor. They found a secluded corner of the deer park for their business, and there Sir John, a slim, sallow gentleman of some 30 years of age, made an onslaught with sword and dagger upon Sir Oliver, full worthy of the onslaught he had made earlier with his tongue. But his impetuosity availed him less than nothing. Sir Oliver was come there with a certain purpose, and it was his way that he never failed to carry through a thing to which he set his hand. In 3 minutes it was all over, and Sir Oliver was carefully wiping his blade, while Sir John lay coughing upon the turf tended by white-faced Peter Godolphin, and a scared groom who had been bidden thither to make up the necessary tale of witnesses. Sir Oliver sheathed his weapons and resumed his coat, then came to stand over his fallen foe, considering him critically. I think I have silenced him for a little time only, he said, and I confess that I intended to do better. I hope, however, that the lesson will suffice and that he will lie no more, at least concerning me. Do you mock a fallen man? Was Master Godolphin's angry protest. God forbid, said Sir Oliver soberly. There is no mockery in my heart. There is, believe me, nothing but regret that I should not have done the thing more thoroughly. I will send assistance from the house. As I go, give you good day, Master Peter. From Arwenack, he rode round by Penryn on his homeward way. But he did not go straight home. He paused at the gates of Godolphin Court, which stood above Trefusis Point commanding the view of Carrick Roads. He turned in under the old gateway and drew up in the courtyard, leaping to the kidney stones that paved it. He announced himself a visitor to Mistress Rosamond. He found her in her bower, a light, turreted chamber on the mansion's eastern side, with windows that looked out upon that lovely sheet of water and the wooded slopes beyond. She was sitting with a book in her lap in the deep of that tall window when he entered, preceded and announced by Sally Pentreath, who, now her tired woman, had once been her nurse. She rose with a little exclamation of gladness when he appeared under the lintel, scarce high enough to admit him without stooping, and stood regarding him across the room with brightened eyes and flushing cheeks. What need is there to describe her? In the blaze of notoriety into which she was anon to be thrust by Sir Oliver Tressilian, there was scarce a poet in England who did not sing the grace and loveliness of Rosamund Godolphin, and in all conscience enough of those fragments have survived. Like her brother, she was tawny-headed, and she was divinely tall, though as yet her figure in its girlishness was almost too slender for her height. "I had not looked for you so early," she was beginning, when she observed that his countenance was oddly stern. "Why, what has happened?" she cried, her intuitions clamoring loudly of some mischance. "Not to alarm you, sweet, yet something that may vex you." He set an arm about that lissom waist of hers above the swelling farthingale, and gently led her back to her chair, then flung himself upon the window seat beside her. "You hold Sir John Killigrew in some affection?" he said between statement and inquiry. "Why, yes. He was our guardian until my brother came of full age." Sir Oliver made a wry face. "Aye, there's the rub. Well, I've all but killed him." She drew back into her chair, recoiling before him, and he saw horror leap to her eyes and blench her face. He made haste to explain the causes that had led to this. He told her briefly of the calumnies concerning him that Sir John had put about to vent his spite at having been thwarted in a matter of his coveted license to build at Smithick. "That mattered little," he concluded. "I knew these tales concerning me were abroad, and I held in the same contempt as I hold their utterer." But he went further, rose. "He poisoned your brother's mind against me, and he stirred up in him the slumbering rancor that in my father's time was wont to lie between our houses. Today Peter came to me with the clear intent to make a quarrel. He affronted me as no man has ever dared." She cried out at that, her already great alarm redoubled. He smiled. "Do not suppose that I could harm him. He is your brother, and so sacred to me. He came to tell me that no betrothal was possible between us, forbade me ever again to visit Godolphin Court, dubbed me pirate and vampire to my face, and reviled my father's memory. I tracked the evil of all this to its source in Killigrew, and rode straight to Arwenack to damn that source of falsehood for all time. I did not accomplish quite so much as I intended. You see, I am frank, my Rose. It may be that Sir John will live. If so, I hope that he may profit by this lesson. I have come straight to you," he concluded, "that you may hear the tale from me before another comes to malign me with false stories of this happening." You mean Peter?" she cried. "Alas," he sighed. She sat very still and white, looking straight before her, and not all at Sir Oliver. At length she spoke. "I am not skilled in reading men," she said in a sad, small voice. "How should I be, that am but a maid who has led a cloistered life? I was told of you that you were violent and passionate, a man of bitter enmities, easily stirred to hatreds, cruel and ruthless in the persecution of them. You, too, have been listening to Sir John," he muttered and laughed shortly. "All this was I told," she pursued as if he had not spoken, "and all did I refuse to believe because my heart was given to you. Yet of what have you made proof today?" "Of forbearance," said he shortly. "Forbearance?" she echoed, and her lips writhed in a smile of weary irony. "Surely you mock me." He set himself to explain. "I have told you what Sir John had done. I have told you that the greater part of it, and matter all that touched my honor, I know Sir John have done long since. Yet I suffered it in silence and contempt. Was that to show myself easily stirred to ruthlessness? What was it but forbearance? When, however, he carries his petty huckster's rancor so far as to seek to choke from me my source of happiness in life, and sends your brother to affront me, I am still so forbearing that I recognize your brother to be no more than a tool, and go straight to the hand that wielded him. Because I know of your affection for Sir John the First gave him such latitude as no man of honor in England would have given him. Then, seeing that she still avoided his regard, still sat in that frozen attitude of horror at learning that the man she loved had imbrued his hands with the blood of another whom she also loved, his pleading quickened to a warmer note. He flung himself upon his knees beside her chair and took in his great sinewy hands the slender fingers which she listlessly surrendered. "Rose," he cried, and his deep voice quivered with intercession, "dismiss all that you have heard from out your mind. Consider only this thing that has befallen. Suppose that Lionel, my brother, came to you, and that, having some measure of power and authority to support him, he swore to you that you should never wed me, swore to prevent this marriage because he deemed you such a woman as could not bear my name with honor to myself. And suppose that to all this he added insult to the memory of your dead father. What answer would you return him? Speak, Rose. Be honest with thyself and me. Deem yourself in my place, and say in honesty if you can still condemn me for what I have done. Say if it differs much from what you would wish to do in such a case as I have named." Her eyes scanned now his upturned face, every line of which was pleading to her and calling for impartial judgment. Her face grew troubled and then almost fierce. She set her hands upon his shoulders and looked deep into his eyes. "You swear to me, no, that all is as you have told it me. You have added naught. You have altered naught to make the tale more favorable to yourself. You need such oaths from me?" he asked, and she saw sorrow spread upon his countenance. "If I did, I should not love thee, no. But in such an hour I need your own assurance. Will you not be generous and bear with me? Strengthen me to withstand anything that may be said hereafter?" "As God's my witness, I have told you true and all," he answered solemnly. She sank her head to his shoulder. She was weeping softly, overwrought by this climax to all that in silence and in secret she had suffered since he had come a-wooing her. Then she said, "I believe you acted rightly. I believe with you that no man of honor could have acted otherwise. I must believe you, no. For did I not, then I could believe in naught and hope for naught. You are as a fire that has seized upon the better part of me and consumed it all to ashes that you may hold it in your heart. I am content, so you be true. True, I shall ever be, sweetheart," he whispered fervently. "Could I be less since you are sent to make me so?" She looked at him again, and now she was smiling wistfully through her tears. "And you will bear with Peter?" she implored him. "He shall have no power to anger me," he answered. "I swear that too. Do you know that but today he struck me?" "Struck you? You did not tell me that." "My quarrel was not with him, but with the rogue that sent him. I laughed at the blow. Was he not sacred to me? He is good at heart, no," she pursued. "In time he will come to love you as you deserve, and you will come to know that he, too, deserves your love. He deserves it now for the love he bears to you. And you will think ever thus during the little while of waiting that perforce must lie before us? I shall never think otherwise, sweet. Meanwhile I shall avoid him, and that no harm may come should he forbid me Godolphin Court, I'll even stay away. In less than a year you will be of full age, and none may hinder you to come and go. What is a year, with such hope as mine to still impatience?" She stroked his face. "Art very gentle with me ever, Noel," she murmured fondly. "I cannot credit you are ever harsh to any, as they say." "Heed them not," he answered her. "I may have been something of all that, but you have purified me, Rose. What man that loved you could be aught but gentle?" He kissed her and stood up. "I had best be going now," he said. "I shall walk along the shore towards Trefusis Point tomorrow morning. If you should chance to be similarly disposed—" She laughed and rose in her turn. "I shall be there, dear Noel." "'Twere best so hereafter," he assured her, smiling, and so took his leave. She followed him to the stairhead and watched him as he descended with eyes that took pride in the fine, upright carriage of that stalwart, masterful lover. Chapter 3. The Forge. Sir Oliver's wisdom in being the first to bear Rosamund the story of that day's happenings was established anon when Master Godolphin returned home. He went straight in quest of his sister, and in a frame of mind oppressed by fear and sorrow, for Sir John, by his general sense of discomfiture at the hands of Sir Oliver, and by the anger begotten of all this, he was harsh in manner and disposed to Hector. "Madam," he announced abruptly, "Sir John is like to die." The astounding answer she returned him, that is, astounding to him, did not tend to soothe his sorely ruffled spirit. "I know," she said, "and I believe him to deserve no less. Who deals in calumny should be prepared for the wages of it." He stared at her in a long, furious silence, then exploded into oaths, and finally inveighed against her unnaturalness and pronounced her bewitched by that foul dog Tressilian. "It is fortunate for me," she answered him composedly, "that he was here before you to give me the truth of this affair." Then her assumed calm and the anger with which she had met his own all fell away from her. "Oh, Peter, Peter," she cried in anguish, "I hope that Sir John will recover. I am distraught by this event. But be just, I implore you. Sir Oliver has told me how hard-driven he had been. He shall be driven harder yet, as God's my life, if you think this deed shall go unpunished." She flung herself upon his breast and implored him to carry this quarrel no further. She spoke of her love for Sir Oliver and announced her firm resolve to marry him in despite of all opposition that could be made, all which did not tend to soften her brother's humor. Yet because of the love that ever had held these two in closest bonds, he went so far in the end as to say that should Sir John recover, he would not himself pursue the matter further. But if Sir John should die, as was very likely, honor compelled him to seek vengeance of a deed to which he had himself so very largely contributed. "I read that man as if he were an open book," the boy announced, with callow boastfulness. "He has the subtlety of Satan, yet he does not delude me. It was at me he struck through Killigrew. Because he desires you, Rosamond, he could not, as he bluntly told me, deal with me however I provoked him, not even though I went the length of striking him. He might have killed me for it, but he knew that to do so would place a barrier twixt him and you. Oh, he is calculating as all the fiends of hell. So, to wipe out the dishonor which I did him, he shifts the blame of it upon Killigrew and goes out to kill him, which he further thinks may act as a warning to me. But if Killigrew dies," and thus he rambled on, filling her gentle heart with anguish to see this feud increasing between the two men she loved best in all the world. If the outcome of it should be that either were to kill the other, she knew that she could never again look upon the survivor. She took heart at last in the memory of Sir Oliver's sworn promise that her brother's life should be inviolate to him. Betide what might, she trusted him. She depended upon his word, and that rare strength of his which rendered possible to him a course that no weaker man would dare pursue. And in this reflection her pride in him increased, and she thanked God for a lover who in all things was a giant among men. But Sir John Killigrew did not die. He hovered between this world and a better one for some 7 days, at the end of which he began to recover. By October he was abroad again, gaunt and pale, reduced to half the bulk that had been as before, a mere shadow of a man. One of his first visits was to Godolphin Court. He went to remonstrate with Rosamond upon her betrothal, and he did so at the request of her brother. But his remonstrances were strangely lacking the force that she had looked for. The odd fact is that in his near approach to death, and with his earthly interest dwindling, Sir John had looked matters frankly in the face, and had been driven to the conclusion, a conclusion impossible to him in normal health, that he had got no more than he deserved. He realized that he had acted unworthily, if unconscious at the time of the unworthiness of what he did, that the weapons with which he had fought Sir Oliver were not the weapons that become a gentleman or in which there is credit to be won. He perceived that he had permitted his old enmity for the house of Tressilian, swollen by a sense of injury lately suffered in the matter of the license to build at Smithick, to warp his judgment, and to persuade him that Sir Oliver was all he had dubbed him. He realized that jealousy, too, had taken a hand in the matter. Sir Oliver's exploits upon the seas had brought him wealth, and with this wealth he was building up once more the Tressilian sway in those parts, which Ralph Tressilian had so outrageously diminished, so that he threatened to eclipse the importance of the Killigrews of Arwenack. Nevertheless, in the hour of reaction, he did not go so far as to admit that Sir Oliver Tressilian was a fit mate for Rosamond Godolphin. She and her brother had been placed in his care by their late father, and he had nobly discharged his tutelage until such time as Peter had come to full age. His affection for Rosamond was tender as that of a lover, but tempered by a feeling entirely paternal. He went very near to worshipping her, and when all was said, when he had cleared his mind of all dishonest bias, he still found overmuch to dislike in Oliver Tressilian, and the notion of his becoming Rosamond's husband was repellent. First of all, there was that bad Tressilian blood, notoriously bad, and never more flagrantly displayed than in the case of the late Ralph Tressilian. It was impossible that Oliver should have escaped the taint of it, nor could Sir John perceive any signs that he had done so. He displayed the traditional Tressilian turbulence. He was passionate and brutal, and the pirate's trade to which he had now set his hand was of all trades the one for which he was by nature best equipped. He was harsh and overbearing, impatient of correction, and prone to trample other men's feelings underfoot. Was this, he asked himself in all honesty, a mate for Rosamund? Could he entrust her happiness to the care of such a man? Assuredly he could not. Therefore, being whole again, he went to remonstrate with her as he accounted it his duty and as Master Peter had besought him. Yet knowing the bias that had been his, he was careful to understate rather than to overstate his reasons. But, Sir John, she protested, if every man is to be condemned for the sins of his forebears, but few could escape condemnation, and wherever shall you find me a husband deserving your approval? His father, began Sir John. Tell me not of his father, but of himself, she interrupted. He frowned impatiently. They were sitting in that bower of hers above the river. I was coming to tea, he answered, a thought testily, for these interruptions which made him keep to the point robbed him of his best arguments. However, suffice it that many of his father's vicious qualities he has inherited, as we see in his ways of life. That he has not inherited others only the future can assure us. In other words, she mocked him, yet very seriously, I am to wait until he dies of old age to make quite sure that he has no such sins as must render him an unfitting husband? No, no, he cried. Good lack, what a perverseness is thine. The perverseness is your own, Sir John. I am but the mirror of it. He shifted in his chair and grunted. Be it so, then, he snapped. We will deal with the qualities that already he displays. And Sir John enumerated them. But this is no more than your judgment of him, no more than what you think him. 'Tis what all the world thinks him. But I shall not marry a man for what others think of him, but for what I think of him myself. And in my view you cruelly malign him. I discover no such qualities in Sir Oliver. 'Tis that you should be spared such a discovery that I am beseeching you not to wed him. Yet unless I wed him, I shall never make such a discovery. And until I make it, I shall ever continue to love him and to desire to wed him. Is all my life to be spent so? She laughed outright and came to stand beside him. She put an arm about his neck as she might have put about the neck of her father, as she had been in the habit of doing any day in these past 10 years, and thereby made him feel himself to have reached an unconscionable age. With her hand she rubbed his brow. Why, here are wicked wrinkles of ill humor, she cried to him. You are all undone and by a woman's wit, and you do not like it. I am undone by a woman's willfulness, by a woman's headstrong resolve not to see. You have naught to show me, Sir John. Naught is all that I have said naught. Words are not things, judgments are not facts. You say that he is so, and so, and so. But when I ask you upon what facts you judge him, your only answer is that you think him to be what you say he is. Your thoughts may be honest, Sir John, but your logic is contemptible. And she laughed again at his gaping discomfiture. Come, now, deal like an honest, upright judge, and tell me one act of his, one thing that is ever done and of which you have sure knowledge, that will bear him out to be what you say he is. Now, Sir John. He looked up at her impatiently. Then at last he smiled. Rogue, he cried, and upon a distant day he was to bethink him of those words. If ever he be brought to judgment, I can desire him no better advocate than thou. Thereupon, following up her advantage swiftly, she kissed him. Nor could I desire him a more honest judge than you. What was the poor man to do thereafter? What he did, live up to her pronouncement, and go forthwith to visit Sir Oliver and compose their quarrel. The acknowledgment of his fault was handsomely made, and Sir Oliver received it in a spirit no less handsome. But when Sir John came to the matter of Mistress Rosamund, he was, out of a sense of duty to her, less generous. He announced that since he could not bring himself to look upon Sir Oliver as a suitable husband for her, nothing that he had now said must mislead Sir Oliver into supposing him a consenting party to any such union. But that, he added, is not to say that I oppose it. I disapprove, but I stand aside. Until she is of full age, her brother will refuse his sanction. After that, the matter will concern neither him nor myself. I hope, said Sir Oliver, he will take as wise a view, but whatever view he takes will be no matter. For the rest, Sir John, I thank you for your frankness, and I rejoice to know that if I may not count you for my friend, at least I need not reckon you among my enemies." But if Sir John was thus won round to a neutral attitude, Master Peter's rancor abated nothing, rather increased each day, and presently there came another matter to feed it, a matter of which Sir Oliver had no suspicion. He knew that his brother Lionel rode almost daily to Malpas, and he knew the object of those daily rides. He knew of the lady who kept a sort of court there for the rustic bucks of Truro, Penryn, and Helston, and he knew something of the ill repute that had attached to her in town, a repute, in fact, which had been the cause of her withdrawal into the country. He told his brother some frank and ugly truths concerning her, by way of warning him, and therein, for the first time, the twain went very near to quarreling. After that he mentioned her no more. He knew that in his indolent way Lionel could be headstrong, and he knew human nature well enough to be convinced that interference here would but set up a breach between himself and his brother, without in the least achieving its real object. So Oliver shrugged resignedly and held his peace. There he left the affair, nor ever spoke again of Malpas and the siren who presided there. And meanwhile the autumn faded into winter, and with the coming of stormy weather Sir Oliver and Rosamund had fewer opportunities of meeting. To Godolphin Court he would not go since she did not desire it, and himself he deemed it best to remain away, since otherwise he must risk a quarrel with his master, who had forbidden him the place. In those days he saw Peter Godolphin but little, and on the rare occasions when they did meet they passed each other with a very meager salute. Sir Oliver was entirely happy, and men noticed how gentler were his accents, how sunnier had become a countenance that they had known for haughty and forbidding. He waited for his coming happiness with the confidence of an immortal in the future. Patience was all the service fate asked of him, and he gave that service blithely, depending upon the reward that soon now would be his own. Indeed, the year drew near its close, and ere another winter should come round, Penarrow House would own a mistress. That to him seemed as inevitable as the season itself. And yet for all his supreme confidence, for all his patience and the happiness he culled from it, there were moments when he seemed oppressed by some elusive sense of overhanging doom, by some subconsciousness of an evil in the womb of destiny. Did he challenge his oppression? Did he seek to translate it into terms of reason? He found nothing upon which his wits could fasten, and he came ever to conclude that it was his very happiness by its excessiveness that was oppressing him, giving him at times that sense of premonitory weight about the heart, as if to check its joyous soarings. One day, a week from Christmas, he had occasion to ride to Helston on some trifling affair. For half a week a blizzard had whirled about the coast, and he had been kept chafing indoors what time layer upon layer of snow was spread upon the countryside. On the fourth day, the storm being spent, the sun came forth. The skies were swept clear of clouds, and all the countryside lay robed in a sun-drenched, dazzling whiteness. Sir Oliver called for his horse, and rode forth alone through the crisp snow. He turned homeward very early in the afternoon, but when a couple of miles from Helston, he found that his horse had cast a shoe. He dismounted, and bridle over arm tramped on through the sunlit vale between the heights of Pendennis and Arwenack, singing as he went. He came thus to Smithick and the door of the forge. About it stood a group of fishermen and rustics, for, in the absence of any inn just there, this forge was ever a point of congregation. In addition to the rustics and an itinerant merchant with his pack horses, there were present Sir Andrew Flack, the parson from Penryn, and Master Gregory Bain, one of the justices from the neighborhood of Truro. Both were well known to Sir Oliver, and he stood in friendly gossip with them what time he waited for his horse. It was all very unfortunate, from the casting of that shoe to the meeting with those gentlemen, for as Sir Oliver stood there, down the gentle slope from Arwenack Road, Master Peter Godolphin. It was said afterward by Sir Andrew and Master Bain that Master Peter appeared to have been carousing. So flushed was his face, so unnatural the brightness of his eye, so thick his speech, and so extravagant and foolish what he said. There can be little doubt that it was so. He was addicted to canary, and so indeed was Sir John Killigrew, and he had been dining with Sir John. He was of those who turn quarrelsome in wine, which is but another way of saying that when the wine was in and the restraint out, his natural humor came uppermost untrammeled. The sight of Sir Oliver standing there gave the lad precisely what he needed to indulge that evil humor of his, and he may have been quickened in his purpose by the presence of those other gentlemen. In his half-fuddled state of mind, he may have recalled that once he had struck Sir Oliver, and Sir Oliver had laughed and told him that none would believe it. He drew rein suddenly as he came abreast of the group, so suddenly that he pulled his horse until it almost sat down like a cat. Yet he retained his saddle. Then he came through the snow that was all squelched in mud just about the forge, and leered at Sir Oliver. "I am from Arwenack," he announced unnecessarily. "We have been talking of you." "You could have had no better subject of discourse," said Sir Oliver, smiling, for all that his eyes were hard and something scared, though his fears did not concern himself. "Marry, you are right. You make an engrossing topic, you and your debauched father." "Sir," replied Sir Oliver, "once already have I deplored your mother's utter want of discretion." The words were out at him in a flash under the spur of the gross insult flung at him, uttered in the momentary blind rage aroused by that inflamed and taunting face above him. No sooner were they sped than he repented them, the more bitterly because they were greeted by a guffaw from the rustics. He would have given half his fortune in that moment to have recalled them. Master Godolphin's face had changed as utterly as if he had removed a mask. From flush that it had been, it was livid now, and the eyes were blazing, the mouth twitching. Thus a moment he glowered upon his enemy. Then, standing in his stirrups, he swung aloft his whip. "You dog!" he cried in a snarling sob. "You dog!" And his lash came down and cut a long red wheal across Sir Oliver's dark face. With cries of dismay and anger the others, the parson, the justice, and the rustics got between the pair. For Sir Oliver was looking very wicked, and all the world knew him for a man to be feared. "Master Godolphin, I cry shame upon you," exclaimed the parson. "If evil comes of this, I shall testify to the grossness of your aggression. Get you gone from here." "Go to the devil, sir," said Master Godolphin thickly. "Is my mother's name to be upon the lips of that bastard? By God, man, the matter rests not here. He shall send his friends to me, or I will horsewhip him every time we meet. You hear, Sir Oliver?" Sir Oliver made him no reply. "You hear," he roared. "There is no Sir John Killigrew this time upon whom you can shift a quarrel. Come you to me and get the punishment of which that whiplash is but an earnest." Then with a thick laugh he drove spurs into his horse's flanks, so furiously that he all but sent the parson and another sprawling. "Stay but a little while for me," roared Sir Oliver after him. "You'll ride no more, my drunken fool." And in a rage he bellowed for his horse, flinging off the parson and Master Bane, who endeavored to detain and calm him. He vaulted to the saddle when the nag was brought him, and whirled away in furious pursuit. The parson looked at the justice, and the justice shrugged, his lips tight pressed. "The young fool is drunk," said Sir Andrew, shaking his white head. "He's in no case to meet his maker, yet he seems very eager," quoth Master Justice Bane. "I doubt I shall hear more of the matter." He turned and looked into the forge where the bellows now stood idle, the smith himself grimy and apron and leather in the doorway, listening to the rustic's account of the happening. Master Bane, it seems, had a taste for analogies. "Faith," he said, "the place was excellently well chosen. They have forged here today a sword which it will need blood to temper." Chapter 4. The Intervener. The parson had notions of riding after Sir Oliver, and begged Master Bane to join him. But the justice looked down his long nose and opined that no good purpose was to be served, that Tressilians were ever wild and bloody men, and that an angry Tressilian was a thing to be avoided. Sir Andrew, who was far from valorous, thought there might be wisdom in the justice's words, and remembered that he had troubles enough of his own with a froward wife without taking up the burdens of others. Master Godolphin and Sir Oliver between them, quoth the justice, had got up this storm of theirs. A God's name let them settle it. And if in the settling they should cut each other's throats, happy the countryside would be well rid of a brace of turbulent fellows. The peddler deemed them a couple of madmen, whose ways were beyond the understanding of a sober citizen. The others, the fishermen and the rustics, had not the means to follow even had they had the will. They dispersed to put abroad the news of that short, furious quarrel, and to prophesy that blood would be let in the adjusting of it. This prognostication they based entirely upon their knowledge of the short Tressilian way, but was a matter in which they were entirely wrong. It is true that Sir Oliver went galloping along that road that follows the Penryn River, and that he pounded over the bridge in the town of Penryn, in Master Godolphin's wake with murder in his heart. Men who saw him riding wildly thus with a red wheal across his white furious face said that he looked a very devil. He crossed the bridge upon Penryn a half hour after sunset, as dusk was closing into night, and it may be that the sharp, frosty air had a hand in the cooling of his blood. For as he reached the river's eastern bank, he slackened his breakneck pace, even as he slackened the angry galloping of his thoughts. The memory of that oath he had sworn 3 months ago to Rosamund smote him like a physical blow. It checked his purpose, and, reflecting this, his pace fell to an amble. He shivered to think how near he had gone to wrecking all the happiness that lay ahead of him. What was a boy's whiplash, that his resentment of it should set all his future life in jeopardy? Even though men should call him a coward for submitting to it and leaving the insult unavenged, what should that matter? Moreover, upon the body of him who did so proclaim him, he could brand the lie of a charge so foolish. Sir Oliver raised his eyes to the deep sapphire dome of heaven where an odd star was glittering frostily, and thanked God from a swelling heart that he had not overtaken Peter Godolphin whilst his madness was upon him. A mile or so below Penryn, he turned up the road that ran down to the ferry there, and took his way home over the shoulder of the hill with a slack rein. It was not his usual way. He wont ever go round by Trefusis Point, that he might take a glimpse at the walls of the house that harbored Rosamund and a glance at the window of her bower. But tonight he thought the shorter road over the hill would be the safer way. If he went by Godolphin Court, he might chance to meet Peter again, and his past anger warned him against courting such a meeting, warned him to avoid it lest evil should betide. Indeed, so imperious was a warning, and such were his fears of himself after what had just passed, that he resolved to leap and narrow on the next day. Whither he would go, he did not then determine. He might repair to London, and he might even go upon another cruise, an idea which he had lately dismissed under Rosamund's earnest intercession. But it was imperative that he should quit the neighborhood, and place a distance between Peter Godolphin and himself until such time as he might take Rosamund to wife. 8 months or so of exile, but what matter better so than that he should be driven into some deed that would compel him to spend his whole lifetime apart from her? He would write, and she would understand and approve when he told her what had passed that day. The resolve was firmly implanted in him by the time he reached Penarrow, and he felt himself uplifted by it and by the promise it afforded him that thus his future happiness would be assured. Himself he stabled his horse, for the 2 grooms he kept. One had by his leave set out yesterday to spend Christmas in Devon with his parents. The other had taken a chill and had been ordered to bed that very day by Sir Oliver, who was considerate with those that serve him. In the dining room he found supper spread, and a great log fire blazed in the enormous cowled fireplace, diffusing a pleasant warmth through the vast room, and flickering ruddily upon the trophies of weapons that adorned the walls, upon the tapestries and the portraits of dead Tressilians. Hearing his step, old Nicholas entered bearing a great candle branch which he set upon the table. "You am late, Sir Oliver," said the servant, "and Master Lionel bain't home yet neither." Sir Oliver grunted and scowled as he crunched a log and set it sizzling under his wet heel. He thought of Malpas and cursed Lionel's folly, as, without a word, he loosed his cloak and flung it on an oaken coffer by the wall, where already he had cast his hat. Then he sat down, and Nicholas came forward to draw off his boots. When that was done and the old servant stood up again, Sir Oliver shortly bade him to serve supper. "Master Lionel cannot be long now," said he, "and give me to drink, Nick. 'Tis what I most require." "I've brewed ye a posset o' canary sack," announced Nicholas. "There am no better supping o' a frosty winter's night. Sir Oliver," he departed to return presently with a blackjack that was steaming fragrantly. He found his master still in the same attitude, staring at the fire and frowning darkly. Sir Oliver's thoughts were still of his brother and Malpas, and so insistent were they that his own concerns were for the moment quite neglected. He was considering whether it was not his duty, after all, to attempt a word of remonstrance. At length he rose with a sigh and got a table. There he bethought him of his sick groom, and asked Nicholas for news of him. Nicholas reported the fellow to be much as he'd been, whereupon Sir Oliver took up a cup and brimmed it with the steaming posset. "Take him that," he said. "There's no better medicine for such an ailment." Outside fell a clatter of hoofs. "Here be Master Lionel at last," said the servant. "No doubt," agreed Sir Oliver. "No need to stay for him. Here is all he needs. Carry that to Tom ere it cools. It was his object procure the servant's absence when Lionel should arrive, resolved as he was to greet him with a sound rating for his folly. Reflection had brought him the assurance that this was become his duty in view of his projected absence from Panero, and in his brother's interest he was determined not to spare him. He took a deep draught of the posset, and as he set it down he heard Lionel's step without. Then the door was flung open, and his brother stood on the threshold a moment at gaze. Sir Oliver looked round with scowl, the well-considered reproof already on his lips. "So," he began and got no further. The sight that met his eyes drove the ready words from his lips and mind. Instead, it was with a sharp gasp of dismay that he came immediately to his feet. "Lionel!" Lionel lurched in, closed the door, and shot home one of its bolts. Then he leaned against it, facing his brother again. He was deathly pale, with great dark stains under his eyes. His ungloved right hand was pressed to his side, and the fingers of it were all smeared with blood that was still oozing and dripping from between them. Over his yellow doublet on the right side there was a spreading dark stain whose nature did not intrigue Sir Oliver a moment. "My God!" he cried, and ran to his brother. "What's happened, Law? Who has done this?" "Peter Godolphin," came the answer from lips that writhed in a curious smile. Never a word said Sir Oliver, but he set his teeth and clenched his hands until the nails cut into his palms. Then he put an arm about this lad he loved above all save one in the whole world, and with anguish in his mind, he supported him forward to the fire. There Lionel dropped to the chair that Sir Oliver had lately occupied. "What is your hurt, lad? Has it gone deep?" he asked, in terror almost. "'Tis naught, a flesh wound, but I have lost a mortal blood. I thought I should have been drained, or ever I got me home." With fearful speed Sir Oliver drew his dagger, and ripped away doublet, vest, and shirt, laying bare the lad's white flesh. A moment's examination, and he breathed more freely. "Art a very babe, Law," he cried in his relief. "To ride without thought to stand so simple a wound, and so lose all this blood, bad Tressilian blood though it be." He laughed in the immensity of his reaction from that momentary terror. "Stay thou there whilst I call Nick to help us dress this scratch." "No, no!" There was note of sudden fear in the lad's voice, and his hand clutched at his brother's sleeve. "Nick must not know. None must know, or I am undone else." Sir Oliver stared, bewildered. Lionel smiled again, that curious, twisted, rather frightened smile. "I gave better than I took, Noel," said he. "Master Godolphin is as cold by now as the snow on which I left him." His brother's sudden start and the fixed stare from out of his slowly paling face scared Lionel a little. He observed, almost subconsciously, the dull red wheal that came into prominence as the color faded out of Sir Oliver's face, yet never thought to ask how it came there. His own affairs possessed him too completely. "What's this?" quoth Oliver at last, hoarsely. Lionel dropped his eyes, unable longer to meet a glance that was becoming terrible. He would have it. He growled almost sullenly, answering the reproach that was written in every line of his brother's taut body. I had warned him not to cross my path, but tonight I think some madness had seized upon him. He affronted me, no. He said things which it was beyond human power to endure, and... He shrugged to complete his sentence. "Well, well," said Oliver in a small voice. "First let us tend this wound of yours. Do not call Nick," was the other's swift admonition. "Don't you see, Noel?" he explained in answer to the inquiry of his brother's stare. "Don't you see that we fought there almost in the dark and without witnesses? He swallowed. It will be called murder, fair fight though it was, and should be discovered that it was I." He shivered and his glance grew wild. His lips twitched. "I see," said Oliver, who understood at last, and he added bitterly, "You fool." "I had no choice," protested Lionel. "He came at me with his drawn sword. Indeed, I think he was half drunk. I warned him of what must happen to the other did either of us fall, but he bade me not concern myself with the fear of any such consequences to himself. He was full of foul words of me and you and all who ever bore our name. He struck me with the flat of his blade and threatened to run me through as I stood unless I drew to defend myself. What choice had I? I did not mean to kill him. As God's my witness, I did not know." Without a word, Oliver turned to a side table, where stood a metal basin and ewer. He poured water, then came in the same silence to treat his brother's wound. The tale that Lionel told made blame impossible, at least from Oliver. He had but to recall the mood in which he himself had ridden after Peter Godolphin. He had but to remember that only the consideration of Rosamond, only, indeed, the consideration of his future, had set a curb upon his own bloodthirsty humor. When he had washed the wound, he fetched some table linen from a press and ripped it into strips with his dagger. He threaded out one of these and made a preliminary crisscross of the threads across the lips of the wound, for the blade had gone right through the muscles of the breast, grazing the ribs. These threads would help the formation of a clot. Then, with the infinite skill and cunning acquired in the course of his rovings, he proceeded to the bandaging. That done, he opened the window and flung out the blood-tinted water, the cloths with which he had mopped the wound, and all other similar evidences of the treatment he cast upon the fire. He must remove all traces even from the eyes of Nicholas. He had the most implicit trust in the old servant's fidelity, but the matter was too grave to permit of the slightest risk. He realized fully the justice of Lionel's fears that however fair the fight might have been, a thing done thus in secret must be accounted murder by the law. Bidding Lionel wrap himself in his cloak, Sir Oliver unbarred the door and went upstairs in quest of a fresh shirt and doublet for his brother. On the landing, he met Nicholas descending. He held him a moment in talk of the sick man above, and outwardly at least he was now entirely composed. He dispatched him upstairs again upon a trumped-up errand that must keep him absent for some little time, whilst himself he went to get the things he needed. He returned below with them, and when he had assisted his brother into fresh garments with as little movement as possible so as not to disturb his dressing of the wound or set it bleeding afresh, he took the blood-stained doublet, vest, and shirt which he had ripped and flung them, too, into the great fire. When some moments later Nicholas entered the vast room, he found the brothers sitting composedly at table. Had he faced Lionel, he would have observed little amiss with him beyond the deep pallor of his face. But he did not even do so much. Lionel sat with his back to the door, and the servant's advance into the room was checked by Sir Oliver with the assurance that they did not require him. Nicholas withdrew again, and the brothers were once more alone. Lionel ate very sparingly. He thirsted and would have emptied the measure of posset, but that Sir Oliver restrained him, and refused him anything but water lest he should contract a fever. Such a sparing meal as they made, for neither had much appetite, was made in silence. At last Sir Oliver rose, and with slow, heavy steps, suggestive of his humor, he crossed the fireplace. He threw fresh logs on the blaze, and took from the tall mantel-shelf his pipe and a leaden jar of tobacco. He filled the pipe pensively, then with the short iron tongs seized a fragment of glowing wood, and applied it to the herb. He returned to the table, and standing over his brother, he broke at last the silence that had now endured some time. "What," he asked gruffly, "was the cause of your quarrel?" Lionel started and shrank a little. Between finger and thumb he kneaded a fragment of bread, his eyes upon it. "I scarce know," he replied. "Law, that is not the truth." "How?" "'Tis not the truth. I am not to be put off with such an answer. Yourself you said that you had warned him not to cross your path. What path was in your mind?" Lionel leaned his elbows on the table and took his head in his hands, weak from loss of blood, overwrought mentally as well, in a state of revulsion and reaction also from the pursuit which had been the cause of tonight's tragic affair. He had not strength to withhold the confidence his brother asked. On the contrary, it seemed to him that in making such a confidence, he would find a haven and refuge in Sir Oliver. "'Twas that wanton at Malpas was the cause of all," he complained. And Sir Oliver's eye flashed at the words. "I deemed her quite other. I was a fool, a fool. Aye," he choked, and a sob shook him. "I thought she loved me. I would have married her. I would so, by God." Sir Oliver swore softly under his breath. "I believed her pure and good, and—" He checked. "After all, who am I to say even now that she was not? 'Twas no fault of hers. 'Twas he, that foul dog Godolphin, who perverted her. Until he came, all was well between us. And then—" "I see," said Sir Oliver quietly. "I think you have something for which to thank him, if he revealed to you the truth of that strumpet's nature. I would have warned thee, lad, but perhaps I have been weak in that. It was not so, it was not she. I say it was, and if I say so I am to be believed, Lionel. I'd smirch no woman's reputation, without just cause. Be very sure of that." Lionel stared up at him. "Oh, God," he cried presently. "I know not what to believe. I am a shuttlecock flung this way and that way." "Believe me," said Sir Oliver grimly, and set all doubts to rest. Then he smiled. So that was the virtuous Master Peter's secret pastime. The hypocrisy of man. There is no plumbing the endless depths of it. He laughed outright, remembering all the things that Master Peter had said of Ralph Tressilian, delivering himself as though he were some chaste and self-denying anchorite. Then, on that laugh, he caught his breath quite suddenly. Would she know? He asked fearfully. Would that harlot know? Would she suspect that 'twas your hand did this? Aye, would she, replied the other. I told her tonight, when she flouted me and spoke of him, that I went straight to find him and pay the score between us. I was on my way to Godolphin Court when I came upon him in the park. Then you lied to me again, Lionel, for you said 'twas he attacked you. And so he did. Lionel countered instantly. He never gave me time to speak, but flung down from his horse and came at me snarling like a cross-grained mongrel. Oh, he was as ready for the fight as eager. But the woman at Malpas knows, said Sir Oliver gloomily, and if she tells. She'll not, cried Lionel. She dare not for her reputation's sake. Indeed, I think you are right, agreed his brother with relief. She dare not for other reasons. When I come to think of it, her reputation is already such, and so well detested is she that were it known she'd been the cause, however indirect, of this, the countryside would satisfy certain longings that it entertains concerning her. You are sure none saw you either going or returning? None. Sir Oliver strode the length of the room and back, pulling at his pipe. All should be well, then, I think, said he at last. You were best abed. I'll carry you thither. He took up his stripling brother in his powerful arms and bore him upstairs as though he were a babe. When he had seen him safely disposed for slumber, he returned below, shut the door in the hall, drew up the great oaken chair to the fire, and sat there far into the night smoking and thinking. He had said to Lionel that all should be well. All should be well for Lionel. But what of himself with the burden of this secret on his soul? Were the victim another than Rosamund's brother, the matter would have plagued him but little. The fact that Godolphin was slain, it must be confessed, was not in itself the source of his oppression. Godolphin had more than deserved his end, and he would have come by it months ago at Sir Oliver's own hand, but for the fact that he was Rosamund's brother, as we know. There was a rub, the bitter, cruel rub. Her own brother had fallen by the hand of his. She loved her brother more than any living being next to himself, just as he loved Lionel above any other but herself. The pain that must be hers he knew. He experienced some of it in anticipation, participating it because it was hers, and because all things that were hers he must account in some measure his own. He rose up at last, cursing that wanton at Malpas who had come to fling this fresh and terrible difficulty, where already he had to face so many. He stood leaning upon the overmantel, his foot upon one of the dogs of the fender, and considered what to do. He must bear his burden in silence. That was all. He must keep this secret, even from Rosamund. It split his heart to think that he must practice this deceit with her. But naught else was possible short of relinquishing her, and that was far beyond his strength. The resolve adopted, he took up a taper and went off to bed. Chapter 5. The Buckler. It was old Nicholas who brought the news next morning to the brothers as they were breaking their fast. Lionel should have kept his bed that day, but dared not, lest the fact should arouse suspicion. He had a little fever, the natural result both of his wound and of his loss of blood. He was inclined to welcome rather than deplore it, since it set a flush on cheeks that otherwise must have looked too pale. So leaning upon his brother's arm, he came down to a breakfast of herrings and small ale before the tardy sun of that December morning was well risen. Nicholas burst in upon them with a white face and shaking limbs. He gasped out his tale of the event in a voice of terror, and both brothers affected to be shocked, dismayed, and incredulous. But the worst part of that old man's news, the true cause of his terrible agitation, was yet to be announced. And they do say, he cried with anger quivering through his fear, they do say that were you that killed he, Sir Oliver. Aye, quoth Sir Oliver, staring, and suddenly like a flood there burst upon his mind 100 reasons overlooked until this moment. that inevitably must urge the countryside to this conclusion, and to this conclusion only. Where heard you that foul lie? In the tumult of his mind, he never heeded what answer was returned by Nicholas. What could it matter where the fellow had heard the thing? By now it would be the accusation on the lips of every man. There was one course to take, and he must take it instantly, as he had taken it once before in like case. He must straight to Rosamund to forestall the tale that others would carry to her. God send he did not come too late already. He stayed for no more than to get his boots and hat, then to the stables for a horse, and he was away over the short mile that divided Penarrow from Godolphin Court, going by bridle and track meadow straight to his goal. He met none until he fetched up in the courtyard at Godolphin Court. Thence a babble of excited voices had reached him as he approached. But at sight of him there fell a general silence, ominous and staring. A dozen men or more were assembled there, and their eyes considered him first with amazement and curiosity, then with sullen anger. He leapt down from his saddle, and stood a moment waiting for one of the 3 Godolphin grooms he had perceived in that assembly to take his reins. Seeing that none stirred, "How now?" he cried. "Does no one wait here? Hither, sirrah, and hold my horse." The groom addressed hesitated a moment. Then, under the stare of Sir Oliver's hard, commanding eye, he shuffled sullenly forward to do as he was bid. A murmur ran through the group. Sir Oliver flashed a glance upon it, and every tongue trembled into silence. In that silence he strode up the steps and entered the rush-strewn hall. As he vanished, he heard the hubbub behind him break out anew, fiercer than it had been before. But he nothing heeded it. He found himself face to face with a servant, who shrank before him, staring as those in the courtyard had stared. His heart sank. It was plain that he came a little late already, that the tale had got there ahead of him. "Where is your mistress?" said he. I will tell her you are here, Sir Oliver," the man replied in a voice that faltered, and he passed through a doorway on the right. Sir Oliver stood a moment tapping his boots with his whip, his face pale, a deep line between his brows. Then the man reappeared, closing the door after him. "Mistress Rosamund bids you depart, sir. She will not see you." A moment Sir Oliver scanned the servant's face, or appeared to scan it, for it is doubtful if he saw the fellow at all. Then, for only answer, he strode forward towards the door from which the man had issued. The servant set his back to it, his face resolute. "Sir Oliver, my mistress would not see you." "Out of my way," he muttered in his angry, contemptuous fashion, and as the man persisted in his duty, stood his ground. Sir Oliver took him by the breast of his jacket, heaved him aside, and went in. She was standing in mid-apartment, dressed by an odd irony all in bridal white, that yet was not as white as was her face. Her eyes looked like 2 black stains, solemn and haunting, as they fastened up on this intruder who would not be refused. Her lips parted, but she had no word for him. She just stared in a horror that routed all his audacity and checked the masterfulness of his advance. At last he spoke. "I see that you have heard," said he, "the lie that runs the countryside. That is evil enough, but I see that you have lent an ear to it, and that is worse." She continued to regard him with a cold look of loathing. This child that but 2 days ago had lain against his heart, gazing up at him in trust and adoration. "Rosamund," he cried, and approached her by another step. "Rosamund, I am here to tell you that it is a lie." "You had best go," she said, and her voice had an equality that made him tremble. "Go," he echoed stupidly. "You bid me go? You will not hear me?" "I consented to hear you more than once, refused to hear others who knew better than I, and was heedless of their warnings. There is no more to be said between us. I pray God that they may take and hang you." He was white to the lips, and for the first time in his life, he knew fear and felt his great limbs trembling under him. "They may hang me, and welcome, since you believe this thing. They could not hurt me more than you are doing, nor by hanging me could they deprive me of aught I value, since your faith in me is a thing to be blown upon by the first rumor of the countryside." He saw the pale lips twist themselves into a dreadful smile. "There is more than rumor, I think," said she. "There is more than all your lies will ever serve to cloak." "My lies!" he cried. "Rosamund, I swear to you by my honor that I have had no hand in the slaying of Peter. May God rot me where I stand if this be not true." "It seems," said a harsh voice behind him, that you fear God as little as aught else." He wheeled sharply to confront Sir John Killigrew, who had entered after him. "So," he said slowly, and his eyes grew hard and bright as agates, "this is your work." And he waved a hand towards Rosamond. It was plain to what he alluded. "Have done with that," Sir Oliver interrupted him, and smote his great fist upon the table. He was suddenly swept by a gust of passion. "Leave words to fools, Sir John, and criticisms of those that can defend them better. You talk like a man of blood. You come hectoring it here in the very house of the dead, in the very house upon which you have cast this blight of sorrow and murder. Have done, I say, or murder there will be." His voice was a roar, his mien terrific, and bold man though Sir John was, he recoiled. Instantly Sir Oliver had conquered himself again. He swung to Rosamond. "Forgive me," he pleaded. "I am mad, stark mad with anguish at the thing imputed. I have not loved your brother, it is true, but as I swore to you, so have I done. I have taken blows from him and smiled. But yesterday in a public place he affronted me, lashed me across the face with his riding whip, as I still bear the mark. The man who says I were not justified in having killed him for it is a liar and a hypocrite. Yet the thought of you, Rosamond, the thought that he was your brother sufficed to quench the rage in which he left me. I take it you are a more fearsome antagonist than was ever poor Peter Godolphin. Yet when I sought satisfaction of you, I sought it boldly and openly, as is my way. When we measured swords in your park at Arwenack, we did so before witnesses in proper form, that the survivor might not be troubled with the justices. You know me well, and what manner of man I am with my weapons. Should I not have done the like by Peter if I had sought his life? Should I not have sought it in the same open fashion, and so killed him at my pleasure and leisure, and without risk or reproach from any? Sir John was stricken thoughtful. Here was logic hard and clear as ice, and the knight of Arwenack was no fool. But whilst he stood frowning and perplexed at the end of that long tirade, it was Rosamond who gave Sir Oliver his answer. "You ran no risk of reproach from any, do you say?" He turned and was abashed. He knew the thought that was running in her mind. "You mean," he said slowly, gently, his accents charged of reproachful incredulity, "that I am so base and false that I could in this fashion do what I dared not for your sake do openly. 'Tis what you mean. Rosamond, I burn with shame for you that you can think such thoughts of one whom you profess to love." Her coldness fell from her. Under the lash of his bitter, half-scornful accents, her anger mounted, whelming for a moment even her anguish in her brother's death. "You false deceiver," she cried. "There are those who heard you vow his death. Your very words have been reported to me, and from where he lay, they found a trail of blood upon the snow that ran to your own door. Will you still lie?" They saw the color leave his face. They saw his arms drop limply to his sides, and his eyes dilate with obvious sudden fear. A trail of blood?" he faltered stupidly. "I answer that," cut in Sir John, fetched suddenly from out his doubts by that reminder. Sir Oliver turned upon Killigrew again. The knight's words restored to him the courage of which Rosamond's had bereft him. With a man he could fight. With a man there was no need to mince his words. "I cannot answer it," he said, but very firmly, in a tone that brushed aside all implications. "If you say it was so it must have been. Yet when all is said, what does it prove? Does it set it beyond doubt that it was I who killed him? Does it justify the woman who loved me to believe me a murderer and something worse?" He paused and looked at her again, a world of reproach in his glance. She had sunk to a chair and rocked there, her fingers locking and interlocking, her face a mass of pain unutterable. "Can you suggest what else it proves, sir?" quoth Sir John, and there was doubt in his voice. Sir Oliver caught the note of it, and a sob broke from him. "Oh, God of pity," he cried out. "There is doubt in your voice, and there is none in hers. You were my enemy once, and have since been in a mistrustful truce with me. Yet you can doubt that I did this thing. But she who loved me has no room for any doubt." "Sir Oliver," she answered him, "the thing you have done has broken quite my heart. Yet knowing all the taunts by which you were brought to such a deed, I could have forgiven it, I think, even though I could no longer be your wife. I could have forgiven it, I say, but for the baseness of your present denial." He looked at her, white-faced an instant, then turned on his heel and made for the door. There he paused. "Your meaning is quite plain," said he. "It is your wish that I shall take my trial for this deed." He laughed. "Who will accuse me to the justices? Will you, Sir John?" "If Mistress Rosamond so desires me," replied the knight. "Ha! Be it so. But do not think I am the man to suffer myself to be sent to the gallows upon such paltry evidence as satisfies that lady. If any accuser comes to bleed a trail of blood reaching to my door, and of certain words I spoke yesterday in anger, I will take my trial, but it shall be trial by battle upon the body of my accuser. That is my right, and I will have every ounce of it. Do you doubt how God will pronounce? I call upon him solemnly to pronounce between me and such an one. If I am guilty of this thing, may he wither my arm when I enter the lists." "Myself I will accuse you," came Rosamond's dull voice. "And if you will, you may claim your rights against me and butcher me as you butchered him." "God forgive you, Rosamond," said Sir Oliver, and went out. He returned home with hell in his heart. He knew not what the future might hold in store for him, but such was his resentment against Rosamond that there was no room in his bosom for despair. They should not hang him. He would fight them tooth and claw, and yet Lionel should not suffer. He would take care of that. And then the thought of Lionel changed his mood a little. How easily could he have shattered their accusation? How easily have brought her to her proud knees, imploring pardon of him? By a word he could have done it. Yet he feared lest that word must jeopardize his brother. In the calm, still watches of that night, as he lay sleepless upon his bed and saw things without heat, there crept a change into his mental attitude. He reviewed all the evidence that had led her to her conclusions, and he was forced to confess that she was in some measure justified of them. If she had wronged him, he had wronged her yet more. For years she had listened to all the poisonous things that were said of him by his enemies, and his arrogance had made him not a few. She had disregarded all because she loved him. Her relations with her brother had become strained on that account. Yet now, all this returned to crush her. Repentance played its part in her cruel belief that it was by his hand Peter Godolphin had fallen. It must almost seem to her that in a sense she had been a party to his murder by the headstrong course to which she had kept in loving the man her brother hated. He saw it now, and was more merciful in judging her. She had been more than human, if she had not felt as he now saw that she must feel, and since reactions are to be measured by the mental exaltations from which they spring, so was it but natural that now she must hate him fiercely whom she had loved well nigh as fiercely. It was a heavy cross to bear. Yet for Lionel's sake, he must bear it with what fortitude he could. Lionel must not be sacrificed to his egoism for a deed that in Lionel he could not account other than justified. He were base indeed did he so much as contemplate such a way of escape as that. But if he did not contemplate it, Lionel did, and went in terror during those days, a terror that kept him from sleep and so fostered the fever in him that on the second day after that grim affair he had the look of a ghost, hollow-eyed and gaunt. Sir Oliver remonstrated with him, and in such terms as to put heart into him anew. Moreover, there was other news that day to allay his terrors. The justices at Truro had been informed of the event and the accusation that was made, but they had refused point-blank to take action in the matter. The reason of it was that one of them was that same Master Anthony Bain who had witnessed the affront offered Sir Oliver. He declared that whatever had happened to Master Godolphin as a consequence was no more than he deserved, no more than he had brought upon himself. And he gave it as his decision that his conscience, as a man of honor, would not permit him to issue any warrant to the constable. Sir Oliver received this news from that other witness, the parson, who himself had suffered such rudeness at Godolphin's hands, and who, man of the gospel and of peace though he was, entirely supported the justice's decision, or so he declared. Sir Oliver thanked him, protesting that it was kind in him and in Master Bain to take such a view, but for the rest avowing that he had had no hand in the affair, however much appearances might point to him. When, however, it came to his knowledge 2 days later that the whole countryside was in a ferment against Master Bain as a consequence of the attitude he had taken up, Sir Oliver summoned the parson, and straightway rode with him to the justice's house at Truro, there to afford certain evidence which he had withheld from Rosamond and Sir John Killigrew. "Master Bain," he said, when the three of them were closeted in that gentleman's library, "I have heard of the just and gallant pronouncement you have made, and I am come to thank you and to express my admiration of your courage." Master Bain bowed gravely. He was a man whom nature had made grave. But since I would not that any evil consequences might attend your action, I am come to lay proof before you that you have acted more rightly even than you think, and that I am not the slayer. You are not, ejaculated Master Bane in amazement. Oh, I assure you I use no subterfuge with you, as you shall judge. I have proof to show you, as I say, and I am come to do so now before time might render it impossible. I do not desire to be made public just yet, Master Bane, but I wish you to draw up some such document as would satisfy the courts at any future time should this matter be taken further, as well it may. It was a shrewd plea. The proof that was not upon himself was upon Lionel, but time would efface it, and if a non-publication were made of what he was now about to show, it would then be too late to look elsewhere. I assure you, Sir Oliver, that had you killed him after what happened, I could not hold you guilty of having done more than punish a boorish and arrogant offender. I know, sir, but it was not so. One of the pieces of evidence against me, indeed the chief item, is that from Godolphin's body to my door there was a trail of blood. The other two grew tensely interested. The parson watched him with unblinking eyes. Now it follows logically, I think, inevitably indeed, that the murderer must have been wounded in the encounter. The blood could not possibly have been the victim's. Therefore it must have been the slayer's. That the slayer was wounded indeed we know, since there was blood upon Godolphin's sword. Now, Master Bane and you, Sir Andrew, shall be witnesses that there is upon my body not so much as a scratch of recent date. I will strip me here as naked as when first I had the mischance to stray into this world, and you shall satisfy yourselves of that. Thereafter I shall beg you, Master Bane, to indict the document I have mentioned. And he removed his doublet as he spoke. But since I will not give these louts who accuse me so much satisfaction, lest I seem to go and fear them, I must beg, sirs, that you will keep this matter entirely private until such time as its publication may be rendered necessary by events. They saw the reasonableness of his proposal, and they consented, still entirely skeptical. But when they had made their examination, they were utterly dumbfounded to find all their notions entirely overset. Master Bane, of course, drew up the required document and signed and sealed it, while Sir Andrew added his own signature and seal as witness thereunto. With this parchment that should be his buckler against any future need, Sir Oliver rode home, uplifted. For once it were safe to do so, that parchment should be spread before the eyes of Sir John Killigrew and Rosamond, and all might yet be well. Chapter 6. Jasper Lee. If that Christmas was one of sorrow at Godolphin Court, it was nothing less at Penarrow. Sir Oliver was moody and silent in those days, given to sit for long hours staring into the heart of the fire and repeating to himself again and again every word of his interview with Rosamond, now in a mood of bitter resentment against her for having so readily believed his guilt, now in a gentler, sorrowing humor, which made full allowance for the strength of the appearances against him. His half-brother moved softly about the house now in a sort of self-effacement, never daring to intrude upon Sir Oliver's abstractions. He was well acquainted with their cause. He knew what had happened at Godolphin Court, knew that Rosamond had dismissed Sir Oliver for all time, and his heart smote him to think that he should leave his brother to bear this burden that rightly belonged to his own shoulders. The thing preyed so much upon his mind that in an expansive moment, one evening he gave it tongue. "No," he said, standing beside his brother's chair in the firelit gloom, and resting a hand upon his brother's shoulder. "Were it not best to tell the truth?" Sir Oliver looked up quickly, frowning. "Art mad?" quoth he. "The truth would hang thee, Law." "It might not, and in any case you are suffering something worse than hanging." "Oh, I have watched you every hour this past week, and I know the pain that abides in you. It is not just—" And he insisted, "We had best tell the truth." Sir Oliver smiled wistfully. He put out a hand and took his brother's. "'Tis noble in you to propose it, Law. Not half so noble as it is in you to bear all the suffering for a deed that was my own." "Bah!" Sir Oliver shrugged impatiently. His glance fell away from Lionel's face and returned to consideration of the fire. "After all, I can throw off the burden when I will. Such knowledge as that will enhearten a man through any trial." He had spoken in a harsh, cynical tone, and Lionel had turned cold at his words. He stood a long while in silence there, turning them over in his mind and considering the riddle which they presented him. He thought of asking his brother bluntly for the key to it, for the precise meaning of his disconcerting statement, but courage failed him. He feared lest Sir Oliver should confirm his own dread interpretation of it. He drew away after a time, and soon after went to bed. For days thereafter the phrase rankled in his mind, "I can throw off the burden when I will." Conviction grew upon him that Sir Oliver meant that he was enheartened by the knowledge that by speaking if he chose, he could clear himself. That Sir Oliver would so speak, he could not think. Indeed, he was entirely assured that Sir Oliver was very far from intending to throw off his burden. Yet he might come to change his mind. The burden might grow too heavy, his longing for Rosamund too clamorous, his grief at being in her eyes her brother's murderer too overwhelming. Lionel's soul shuddered to contemplate the consequences to himself. His fears were self-revelatory. He realized how far from sincere had been his proposal that they should tell the truth. He perceived that it had been no more than the emotional outburst of the moment, a proposal which, if accepted, he must most bitterly have repented. And then came a reflection that if he were guilty of emotional outbursts that could so outrageously play the traitor to his real desires, were not all men subject to the same? Might not his brother, too, come to fall a prey to one of those moments of mental storm when in a climax of despair he would find his burden altogether too overwhelming and in rebellion cast it from him? Lionel sought to assure himself that his brother was a man of stern fibers, a man who never lost control of himself. But against this, he would argue that what had happened in the past was no guarantee of what might happen in the future, that a limit was set to the endurance of every man being never so strong, and that it was far from impossible that the limit of Sir Oliver's endurance might be reached in this affair. If that happened, in what case should he find himself? The answer to this was a picture beyond his fortitude to contemplate. The danger of his being sent to trial and made to suffer the extreme penalty of the law would be far greater now than if he had spoken at once. The tale he could then have told must have compelled some attention, for he was accounted a man of unsmirched honor, and his word must carry some weight. But now none would believe him. They would argue from his silence and from his having suffered his brother to be unjustly accused that he was craven-hearted and dishonorable, and that if he had acted thus it was because he had no good defense to offer for his deed. Not only would he be irrevocably doomed, but he would be doomed with ignominy. He would be scorned by all upright men, and become a thing of contempt over whose end not a tear would be shed. Thus he came to the dread conclusion that in his endeavors to screen himself he had but enmeshed himself the more inextricably. If Oliver but spoke, he was lost. And back he came to the question, what assurance had he that Oliver would not speak? The fear of this from occurring to him occasionally began to haunt him day and night, and for all that the fever had left him and his wound was entirely healed, he remained pale and thin and hollow-eyed. Indeed, the secret terror that was in his soul glared out of his eyes at every moment. He grew nervous and would start up at the least sound, and he went now in a perpetual mistrust of Oliver, which became manifest in a curious petulance of which there were outbursts at odd times. Coming one afternoon into the dining room, which was ever Sir Oliver's favorite haunt in the mansion Pinero, Lionel found his half-brother in that brooding attitude, elbow on knee and chin on palm, staring into the fire. This was so habitual now in Sir Oliver that it had begun to irritate Lionel's tense nerves. It had come to seem to him that in this listlessness was a studied, tacit reproach aimed at himself. "Why do you sit ever thus over the fire like some old crone?" he growled, voicing at last the irritability that so long had been growing in him. Sir Oliver looked round with mild surprise in his glance. Then from Lionel, his eyes traveled to the long windows. "It rains," he said. "It was not your wont to be driven to the fireside by rain. But rain or shine, 'tis ever the same. You never go abroad." "To what end?" quoth Sir Oliver, with the same mildness, but a wrinkle of bewilderment coming gradually between his dark brows. "Do you suppose I love to meet lowering glances, to see heads approach one another so that confidential curses of me may be muttered?" "Aye," cried Sir Oliver, aghast. "Your very words are a reproach. Do you think I do not read the meaning that lies under them?" Sir Oliver rose slowly, staring at his brother. He shook his head and smiled. Law, he said, "your wound has left you disordered. Boy, with what have I reproached you? What was this hidden meaning of my words? If you will read aright, you will see it to be that to go abroad is to involve myself in fresh quarrels, for my mood has become short, and I will not brook sour looks and mutterings. That is all." He advanced and set his hands upon his brother's shoulders. Holding him so at arm's length, he considered him. What time Lionel drooped his head, and a slow flush overspread his cheeks. "Dear fool," he said, and shook him. "What ails you? You are pale and gaunt, and not yourself at all. I have a notion. I'll furnish me a ship, and you shall sail with me to my old hunting grounds. There is life out yonder, life that will restore your vigor and your zest, and perhaps mine as well. How say you now?" Lionel looked up, his eye brightening. Then a thought occurred to him. A thought so mean that again the color flooded into his cheeks, for he was shamed by it. Yet it clung. If he sailed with Oliver, men would say that he was a partner in the guilt attributed to his brother. He knew, from more than one remark addressed him here or there, and left by him uncontradicted, that the belief was abroad on the countryside that a certain hostility was springing up between himself and Sir Oliver on the score of that happening in Godolphin Park. His pale looks and hollow eyes had contributed to the opinion that his brother's sin was weighing heavily upon him. He had ever been known for a gentle, kindly lad, in all things the very opposite of the turbulent Sir Oliver, and was assumed that Sir Oliver, in his present increasing harshness, used his brother ill because the lad would not condone his crime. A deal of sympathy was consequently arising for Lionel, and was being testified to him on every hand. Were he to accede to such a proposal as Oliver now made him, assuredly he must jeopardize all that. He realized to the full the contemptible quality of his thought, and hated himself for conceiving it. But he could not shake off its dominion. It was stronger than his will. His brother, observing this hesitation, and misreading it, drew him to the fireside and made him sit. "Listen," he said, as he dropped into the chair opposite. "There's a fine ship standing in the road below, off Smithick. You'll have seen her. Her master is a desperate adventurer named Jasper Lee, who is to be found any afternoon in the alehouse at Penycumwick. I know him of old, and he and his ship are to be acquired. He is ripe for any venture, from scuttling Spaniards to trading in slaves, and so that the price be high enough we may buy him body and soul. His is a stomach that refuses nothing, so there be money in the venture. So here is ship and master ready found. The rest I will provide, the crew, the munitions, the armament, and by the end of March we shall see the Lizard dropping astern. What do you say, Law? 'Tis surely better than to sit moping here in this place of gloom." I'll think of it," said Lionel, but so listlessly that all Sir Oliver's quickening enthusiasm perished again at once, and no more was said of the venture. But Lionel did not altogether reject the notion. If on the one hand he was repelled by it, on the other he was attracted almost despite himself. He went so far as to acquire a habit of riding daily over to Penycumwick, and there he made the acquaintance of that hardy and scarred adventurer of whom Sir Oliver had spoken, and listened to marvels the fellow had to tell, many of them too marvelous to be true, of hazards upon distant seas. But one day in early March, Master Jasper Lee had a tale of another kind for him, news that dispelled from Lionel's mind all interest in the captain's ventures on the Spanish Main. The seaman had followed the departing Lionel to the door of the little inn, and stood by his stirrup after he had got to horse. "A word in your ear, good Master Tressilian," said he. "D'ye know what is being concerted here against our brother?" "Against my brother?" "Aye, in the matter of the killing of Master Peter Godolphin last Christmas. Seeing that the justices would not move of themselves, some folk ha petitioned the Lieutenant of Cornwall to command them to grant a warrant for Sir Oliver's arrest on a charge of murder. But the justices ha refused to be driven by his lordship, answering that they hold their office direct from the Queen, and that in such a matter they are answerable to none but her grace. And now I hear that petition be gone to London to the Queen herself, begging her to command her justices to perform their duty or quit their office." Lionel drew a sharp breath, and with dilating eyes regarded the mariner, but made him no answer. Jasper laid a long finger against his nose, and his eyes grew cunning. "I thought I'd warn you, sir, so as you may bid Sir Oliver look to hisself. 'Tis a fine seaman, and fine seamen be none so plentiful." Lionel drew his purse from his pocket, and without so much as looking into its contents, dropped it into the seaman's ready hand. With a muttered word of thanks, he rode home in terror. Almost. It was come. The blow was about to fall, and his brother would at last be forced to speak. At Penarrow a fresh shock awaited him. He learned from old Nicholas that Sir Oliver was from home, that he had ridden over to Godolphin Court. The instant conclusion prompted by Lionel's terror was that already the news had reached Sir Oliver and that he had instantly taken action, for he could not conceive that his brother should go to Godolphin Court upon any other business. But his fears on that score were very idle. Sir Oliver, unable longer to endure the present state of things, had ridden over to lay before Rosamund that proof of which he had taken care to furnish himself. He could do so at last without any fear of hurting Lionel. His journey, however, had been entirely fruitless. She had refused point-blank to receive him, and for all that with a humility entirely foreign to him, he had induced a servant to return to her with a most urgent message. Yet he had been denied. He returned stricken to Penarrow, there to find his brother awaiting him in a passion of impatience. Well, Lionel greeted him. "What will you do now?" Sir Oliver looked at him from under brows that scowled darkly in reflection of his thoughts. "Do now? Of what do you talk?" quoth he. "Have you not heard?" And Lionel told him the news. Sir Oliver stared long at him when he had done. Then his lips tightened, and he smote his brow. "So," he cried, "would that be why she refused to see me? Did she conceive that I went perhaps to plead? Could she think that? Could she?" He crossed to the fireplace and stirred the logs with his boot angrily. "Oh, 'twere too unworthy. Yet of a certainty 'tis her doing this." "What shall you do?" insisted Lionel, unable to repress the question that was uppermost in his mind, and his voice shook. "Do?" Sir Oliver looked at him over his shoulder. "Prick this bubble, by heaven. Make an end of it for them. Confound them and cover them with shame." He said it roughly, angrily, and Lionel recoiled, deeming that roughness and anger aimed at himself. He sank into a chair, his knees loosened by a sudden fear. So it seemed that he had had more than cause for his apprehensions. This brother of his who boasted such affection for him was not equal to bearing this matter through, and yet the thing was so unlike Oliver that a doubt still lingered with him. You will tell them the truth?" he said in small, quavering voice. Sir Oliver turned and considered him more attentively. "A God's name, law, what's in thy mind now?" he asked, almost roughly. "Tell them the truth? Why, of course, but only as it concerns myself. You're not supposing that I shall tell them it was you? You'll not be accounting me capable of that. What other way is there?" Sir Oliver explained the matter. The explanation brought Lionel relief. But this relief was ephemeral. Further reflection presented a new fear to him. It came to him that if Sir Oliver cleared himself, of necessity his own implication must follow. His terrors very swiftly magnified a risk that in itself was so slender as to be entirely negligible. In his eyes it ceased to be a risk. It became a certain and inevitable danger. If Sir Oliver put forward this proof that the trail of blood had not proceeded from himself, it must, thought Lionel, inevitably be concluded that it was his own. As well might Sir Oliver tell them the whole truth, for surely they could not fail to infer it. Thus he reasoned in his terror, accounting himself lost irrevocably, had he but gone with those fears of his to his brother. Or had he but been able to abate them sufficiently to allow reason to prevail, he must have been brought to understand how much further they carried him than was at all justified by probability. Oliver would have shown him this, would have told him that with the collapsing of the charge against himself, no fresh charge could be leveled against any there, that no scrap of suspicion had ever attached to Lionel, or ever could. But Lionel dared not seek his brother in this matter. In his heart he was ashamed of his fears. In his heart he knew himself for a craven. He realized to the full the hideousness of his selfishness, and yet, as before, he was not strong enough to conquer it. In short, his love of himself was greater than his love of his brother, or of 20 brothers. The morrow, a blustering day of late March, found him again at that alehouse at Pennycumwick, in the company of Jasper Leigh. A course had occurred to him, as the only course now possible. Last night his brother had muttered something of going to Killigrew with his proofs, since Rosamund refused to receive him. Through Killigrew he would reach her, he had said, and he would yet see her on her knees craving his pardon for the wrong she had done him, for the cruelty she had shown him. Lionel knew that Killigrew was absent from home just then, but he was expected to return by Easter, and to Easter there was but a week. Therefore he had little time in which to act, little time in which to execute the project that had come into his mind. He cursed himself for conceiving it, but held to it with all the strength of a weak nature. Yet when he came to sit face to face with Jasper Lee in that little inn parlor with the scrub table of plain deal between them, he lacked the courage to set his proposal forth. They drank sherry sack stiffly laced with brandy by Lionel's suggestion, instead of the more customary mulled ale. Yet not until he consumed the best part of a pint of it did Lionel feel himself heartened to broaching his loathsome business. Through his head hummed the words his brother had said some time ago when first the name of Jasper Lee had passed between them. A desperate adventurer ripe for anything, so the price be high enough he may buy him body and soul. Money enough to buy Jasper Lee was ready to Lionel's hand. But it was Sir Oliver's money, the money that was placed at Lionel's disposal by his half-brother's open-handed bounty. And this money he was to employ for Oliver's utter ruin. He cursed himself for a filthy, contemptible hound. He cursed a foul fiend that whispered such suggestions into his mind. He knew himself, despised himself, and reviled himself until he came to swear to be strong and to go through whatever might await him sooner than be guilty of such a baseness. The next moment that same resolve would set him shuddering again as he viewed the inevitable consequences that must attend it. Suddenly the captain set him a question, very softly, that fired the train and blew all his lingering self-resistance into shreds. "You'll ha' borne my warning to Sir Oliver?" he asked, lowering his voice so as not to be overheard by the vintner who was stirring beyond the thin wooden partition. Master Lionel nodded, nervously fingering the jewel in his ear, his eyes shifting from their consideration of the seaman's coarse, weather-tanned and hairy countenance. "I did," he said, "but Sir Oliver is headstrong. He will not stir." "Will he not?" The captain stroked his bushy red beard and cursed profusely and horribly after the fashion of the sea. "Odie's wounds. He's very like to swing if he bides him here." "Aye," said Lionel, "if he bides." He felt his mouth turn dry as he spoke. His heart thudded, but its thuds were softened by a slight insensibility, which the liquor had produced in him. He uttered the words in so curious a tone that the sailor's dark eyes peered at him from under his heavy sandy eyebrows. There was alert inquiry in that glance. Master Lionel got up suddenly. "Let us take a turn outside, Captain," said he. The captain's eyes narrowed. He scented business. There was something plaguily odd about this young gentleman's manner. He tossed off the remains of his sack, slapped down the pot, and rose. "Your servant, Master Tressilian," said he. Outside, our gentleman untethered his horse from the iron ring to which he had attached the bridle. Leading his horse, he turned seaward and strode down the road that wound along the estuary toward Smithick. A sharp breeze from the north was whipping the water into white peaks of foam. The sky was a hard brightness, and the sun shone brilliantly. The tide was running out, and the rock in the very neck of the haven was thrusting its black crest above the water. A cable's length this side of it rode the Black Hull and naked spars of the Swallow, Captain Lee's ship. Lionel stepped along in silence, very gloomy and pensive, hesitating even now, and the crafty mariner reading this hesitation, and anxious to conquer it for the sake of such profit as he conceived might lie in the proposal which he scented, paved the way for him at last. "I think that ye'll have some matter to propose to me," said he slyly. "Out with it, sir, for there never was a man more ready to serve you." "The fact is," said Lionel, watching the other's face with a sidelong glance, "I am in a difficult position, Master Lee." "I've been in a many," laughed the captain, "but never yet in one through which I cannot win. Strip forth your own, and haply I can do as much for you as I am wont to do for myself." "Why, it is this wise," said the other. "My brother will assuredly hang, as you have said, if he bides him here. He is lost if they bring him to trial. And in that case, faith, I am lost too. It dishonors a man's family to have a member of it hanged. 'Tis a horrible thing to have happen." "Indeed, indeed," the sailor agreed encouragingly. "I would abstract him from this," pursued Lionel, and at the same time cursed the foul fiend that prompted him such specious words to cloak his villainy. "I would abstract him from it, and yet 'tis against my conscience that he should go unpunished, for I swear to you, Master Lee, that I abhor the deed, a cowardly, murderous deed." "Ah!" said the captain, and lest that grim ejaculation should check his gentleman, he made haste to add, "To be sure, to be sure." Master Lionel stopped and faced the other squarely, his shoulders to his horse. They were quite alone in as lonely a spot as any conspirator could desire. Behind him stretched the empty beach, Ahead of him the ruddy cliffs that rise gently to the wooded heights of Arwenack. I'll be quite plain and open with you, Master Lee. Peter Godolphin was my friend. Sir Oliver is no more than my half-brother. I would give a deal to the man who would abstract Sir Oliver secretly from the doom that hangs over him, and yet do the thing in such a way that Sir Oliver should not thereby escape the punishment he deserves. It was strange, he thought, even as he said it, that he could bring his lips so glibly to utter words that his heart detested. The captain looked grim. He laid a finger upon Master Lionel's velvet doublet in line with that false heart of his. "I am your man," said he, "but the risk is great. Yet ye say that ye'll give a deal." "Yourself shall name the price," said Lionel quickly, his eyes burning feverishly, his cheeks white. "Oh, I can contrive it, never fear," said the captain. "I know to a nicety what you require. How say you now, if I was to carry him overseas to the plantations where they lack toilers of just such thews as is?" He lowered his voice and spoke with some slight hesitation, fearing that he proposed perhaps more than his prospective employer might desire. He might return, was the answer that dispelled all doubts on that score. "Ah," said the skipper. "What o' the Barbary rovers, then? They lack slaves and are ever ready to trade, though they be niggardly payers. I never heard of none that returned once they had him safe aboard their galleys. I ha' done some trading with them, bartering human freights for spices and eastern carpets and the like." Master Lionel breathed hard. "'Tis a horrible fate, is not?" The captain stroked his beard. "Yet 'tis the only really safe bestowal, and when all is said, 'tis not so horrible as hanging, and certainly less dishonoring to a man's kin. Ye'll be serving Sir Oliver and yourself." "'Tis so, 'tis so," cried Master Lionel almost fiercely. "And the price?" The seaman shifted on his short, sturdy legs, and his face grew pensive. £100, he suggested tentatively. "Done with you for £100, was the prompt answer. So prompt that Captain Lee realized he had driven a fool's bargain, which it was incumbent upon him to amend. "That is, £100 for myself," he corrected slowly. "Then there be the crew to reckon for. To keep their counsel and lend a hand, 'twill mean another 100 at the least." Master Lionel considered a moment. "It is more than I can lay my hands on at short notice. But, look you shall have £150 in coin and the balance in jewels. You shall not be the loser in that, I promise you. And when you come again, and bring me word that all is done as you now undertake, there shall be the like again." Upon that the bargain was settled. And when Lionel came to talk of ways and means, he found that he had allied himself to a man who understood his business thoroughly. All the assistance that the skipper asked was that Master Lionel should lure his gentlemen to some concerted spot conveniently near the waterside. There Lee would have a boat and his men in readiness, and the rest might very safely be left to him. In a flash Lionel bethought him of the proper place for this. He swung round and pointed across the water to Trefusis Point and the gray pile of Godolphin Court, all bathed in sunshine now. "Yonder, at Trefusis Point in the shadow of Godolphin Court at 8 tomorrow night, when there will be no moon. I'll see that he is there. But on your life do not miss him." "Trust me," said Master Lee. "And the money?" "When you have him safely aboard, come to me at Panero," he replied, which showed that after all he did not trust Master Lee any further than he was compelled. The captain was quite satisfied, for should his gentleman fail to disburse, he could always return Sir Oliver to shore. On that they parted. Lionel mounted and rode away, whilst Master Lee made a trump of his hands and hallooed to the ship. As he stood waiting for the boat that came off to fetch him, a smile slowly overspread the adventurer's rugged face. Had Master Lionel seen it, he might have asked himself how far it was safe to drive such bargains with a rogue who kept faith only in so far as it was profitable. And in this matter Master Lee saw a way to break faith with profit. He had no conscience, but he loved as all rogues love to turn the tables upon a superior rogue. He would play Master Lionel most finely, most poetically false, and he found a deal to chuckle over in the contemplation of it. Chapter 7. Trepanned. Master Lionel was absent most of the following day from Panero, upon a pretext of making certain purchases in Truro. It would be 7:30 when he returned, and as he entered he met Sir Oliver in the hall. "I have a message for you from Godolphin Court," he announced, and saw his brother stiffen and his face changed color. "A boy met me at the gates and bade me tell you that Mistress Rosamond desires a word with you forthwith." Sir Oliver's heart almost stopped, then went off at a gallop. She asked for him. She had softened perhaps from her yesterday's relentlessness. She would consent at last to see him. "Be thou blessed for these good tidings," he answered on a note of high excitement. "I go at once." And on the instant he departed. Such was his eagerness, indeed, that under the hot spur of it, he did not even stay to fetch that parchment which was to be his unanswerable advocate. The omission was momentous. Master Lionel said no word as his brother swept out. He shrank back a little into the shadows. He was white to the lips and felt as he would stifle. As the door closed, he moved suddenly. He sprang to follow Sir Oliver. Conscience cried out to him that he could not do this thing. But fear was swift to answer that outcry. Unless he permitted what was planned to take its course, his life might pay the penalty. He turned and lurched into the dining room upon legs that trembled. He found the table set for supper as on that other night when he had staggered in with a wound in his side to be cared for and sheltered by Sir Oliver. He did not approach the table. He crossed to the fire and sat down there holding out his hands to the blaze. He was very cold and could not still his trembling. His very teeth chattered. Nicholas came in to know if he would sup. He answered unsteadily that despite the lateness of the hour, he would await Sir Oliver's return. "Is Sir Oliver abroad?" quoth the servant in surprise. "He went out a moment since, I know not whither," replied Lionel. "But since he has not supped, he is not like to be long absent." Upon that he dismissed the servant, and sat huddled there, a prey to mental tortures which were not to be repressed. His mind would turn upon naught but the steadfast, unwavering affection which Sir Oliver ever had been prodigal towards him. In this very matter of Peter Godolphin's death, what sacrifices had not Sir Oliver made to shield him? From so much love and self-sacrifice in the past, he inclined to argue now that not even in extreme peril would his brother betray him. And then that bad streak of fear which made a villain of him reminded him that to argue thus was to argue upon supposition, that it would be perilous to trust such an assumption, that if, after all, Sir Oliver should fail him in the crucial test, then was he lost indeed. When all is said, a man's final judgment of his fellows must be based upon his knowledge of himself. And Lionel, knowing himself incapable of any such sacrifice for Sir Oliver, could not believe Sir Oliver capable of persisting in such a sacrifice as future events might impose. He reverted to those words Sir Oliver had uttered in that very room 2 nights ago, and more firmly than ever he concluded that they could have but one meaning. Then came doubt, and, finally, assurance of another sort, assurance that this was not so and that he knew it, assurance that he lied to himself. Seeking to condone the thing he did, he took his head in his hands and groaned loud. He was a villain, a black-hearted, soulless villain. He reviled himself again. There came a moment when he rose shuddering, resolved even in this 11th hour to go after his brother and save him from the doom that awaited him out yonder in the night. But again that resolve was withered by the breath of selfish fear. Limply he resumed his seat, and his thoughts took a fresh turn. They considered now those matters which had engaged him on that day when Sir Oliver had ridden to Arwenack to claim satisfaction of Sir John Killigrew. He realized again that Oliver being removed, what he now enjoyed by his brother's bounty, he would enjoy henceforth in his own unquestioned right. The reflection brought him a certain consolation. If he must suffer for his villainy, at least there would be compensations. The clock over the stables chimed the hour of 8. Master Lionel shrank back in his chair at the sound. The thing would be doing even now. In his mind he saw it all, saw his brother come running in his eagerness to the gates of Godolphin Court, and then dark forms resolve themselves in the surrounding darkness and fall silently upon him. He saw him struggling a moment on the ground, then bound hand and foot, a gag thrust into his mouth. He beheld him in fancy borne swiftly down the slope to the beach, and so to the waiting boat. Another half hour sat he there. The thing was done by now, and this assurance seemed to quiet him a little. Then came Nicholas again to babble of some possible mischance having overtaken his master. "What mischance should have overtaken him?" growled Lionel, as if in scorn of the idea. "I pray none indeed," replied the servant. "But Sir Oliver lacks not for enemies nowadays, and 'tis scarce safe for he to be abroad after dark." Master Lionel dismissed the notion contemptuously. For pretence's sake he announced that he would wait no longer, whereupon Nicholas brought in his supper, and left him again to go and linger about the door, looking out into the night and listening for his master's return. He paid a visit to the stables, and knew that Sir Oliver had gone forth afoot. Meanwhile, Master Lionel must make pretense of eating, though actual eating must have choked him. He smeared his platter, broke food, and avidly drank a bumper of claret. Then he, too, feigned a growing anxiety, and went to join Nicholas. Thus they spent the weary night, watching for the return of one whom Master Lionel knew would return no more. At dawn they roused the servants, and sent them to scour the countryside, and put the news of Sir Oliver's disappearance abroad. Lionel himself rode out to Arwenack to ask Sir John Killigrew bluntly if he knew aught of this matter. Sir John showed a startled face, but swore readily enough that he had not so much as seen Sir Oliver for days. He was gentle with Lionel, whom he liked, as everybody liked him. The lad was so mild and kindly in his ways, so vastly different from his arrogant, overbearing brother, that his virtues shone the more brightly by that contrast. "I confess it is natural you should come to me," said Sir John, "but my word on it, I have no knowledge of him. It is not my way to beset my enemies in the dark." Indeed, Sir John, I had not supposed it in my heart," replied the afflicted Lionel. "Forgive me that I should have come to ask a question so unworthy. Set it down to my distracted state. I have not been the same man these months, I think, since that happening in Godolphin Park. The thing has preyed upon my mind. It is a fearsome burden to know your own brother, though I thank God he is no more than my half-brother, guilty of so foul a deed." "How?" cried Killigrew, amazed. "You say that? You believed it yourself." Master Lionel looked confused, a look which Sir John entirely misunderstood and interpreted entirely in the young man's favor. And it was thus and in that moment that was sown the generous seed of the friendship that was to spring up between these two men, its roots fertilized by Sir John's pity that one so gentle-natured, so honest, and so upright should be cursed with so villainous a brother. I see, he said, and he sighed. "You know that we are daily expecting an order from the Queen to her justices to take the action which hitherto they have refused against Sir Oliver." He frowned thoughtfully. "D'ye think Sir Oliver had news of this?" At once Master Lionel saw the drift of what was in the other's mind. "I know it," he replied. "Myself I bored him. But why do you ask? Does it not help us perhaps to understand and explain Sir Oliver's disappearance? God lack, surely, knowing that he were a fool to have tarried here, for he would hang beyond all doubt did he stay for the coming of her Grace's messenger." "My God!" said Lionel, staring. You think he has fled, then?" Sir John shrugged. "What else is to be thought?" Lionel hung his head. "What else, indeed?" said he, and took his leave like a man overwrought, as indeed he was. He had never considered that so obvious a conclusion must follow upon his work so fully to explain the happening, and to set at rest any doubt concerning it. He returned to Panero, and bluntly told Nicholas what Sir John suspected, and what he feared himself must be the true reason of Sir Oliver's disappearance. The servant, however, was none so easy to convince. "But do 'ee believe that he done it?" cried Nicholas. "Do 'ee believe it, Master Lionel?" There was reproach amounting to horror in the servant's voice. "God help me! What else can I believe now that he has fled?" Nicholas sidled up to him with tightened lips. He set two gnarled fingers on the young man's arm. "He am not fled, Master Lionel," he announced with grim impressiveness. "He am never turned tail. Sir Oliver, he don't fear neither man nor devil, and if so be him had killed Master Godolphin, he'd never ha' denied it. Don't 'ee believe Sir John Killigrew. Sir John ever hated he. But in all that countryside the servant was the only one to hold this view. If a doubt had lingered anywhere of Sir Oliver's guilt, that doubt was now dispelled by this flight of his before the approach of the expected orders from the Queen. Later that day came Captain Lee to Panero, inquiring for Sir Oliver. Nicholas brought word of his presence and his inquiry to Master Lionel, who bade him be admitted. The thick-set little seaman rolled in on his bowed legs and leered at his employer when they were alone. "He's snug and safe aboard," he announced. "The thing were done as clean as peeling an apple and as quiet." "Why did you ask for him?" quoth Master Lionel. "Why?" Jasper leered again. My business was with him. There was some talk between us of him going a voyage with me. I've heard the gossip over at Smithick. This will fit in with it. He laid that finger of his to his nose. Trust me to help a sound tale along. Tea were a clumsy business to come here asking for you, sir. You'll know now how to account for my visit. Lionel paid him the price agreed and dismissed him upon receiving the assurance that the Swallow would put to sea upon the next tide. When it became known that Sir Oliver had been in treaty with Master Lee for a passage overseas, and that it was but on that account that Master Lee had tarried in that haven, even Nicholas began to doubt. Gradually Lionel recovered his tranquility as the days flowed on. What was done, and in any case, being now beyond recall, there was no profit in repining. He never knew how fortune aided him, as fortune will sometimes aid a villain. The royal pursuivants arrived some 6 days later, and Master Bain was a recipient of a curt summons to render himself to London, there to account for his breach of trust in having refused to perform his sworn duty. Had Sir Andrew Flack but survived the chill that had carried him off a month ago, Master Justice Bain would have made short work of the accusation lodged against him. As it was, when he urged the positive knowledge he possessed, and told them how he had made the examination to which Sir Oliver had voluntarily submitted, his single word carried no slightest conviction. Not for a moment was it supposed that this was aught but the subterfuge of one who had been lax in his duty and who sought to save himself from the consequences of that laxity. And the fact that he cited as his fellow witness a gentleman now deceased but served to confirm his judges in this opinion. He was opposed from his office and subjected to a heavy fine, and there the matter ended, for the hue and cry that was afoot entirely failed to discover any trace of the missing Sir Oliver. For Master Lionel, a new existence set in from that day, looked upon as one in danger of suffering for his brother's sins. The countryside determined to help him as far as possible to bear his burden. Great stress was laid upon the fact that after all he was no more than Sir Oliver's half-brother. Some there were who would have carried their kindness to the lengths of suggesting that perhaps he was not even that, and that it was but natural that Ralph Tressilian's second wife should have repaid her husband in kind for his outrageous infidelities. This movement of sympathy was led by Sir John Killigrew, and it spread in so rapid and marked a manner that very soon Master Lionel was almost persuaded that it was no more than he deserved, and he began to sun himself in the favor of a countryside that hitherto had shown little but hostility for men of the Tressilian blood. Chapter 8. The Spaniard, the Swallow, having passed through a gale in the Bay of Biscay, a gale which she weathered like the surprisingly steady old tub she was, rounded Cape Finisterre, and so emerged from tempest into peace, from leaden skies and mountainous seas into a sunny azure calm. It was like a sudden transition from winter into spring, and she ran along now, close hauled to the soft easterly breeze, with a gentle list to port. It had never been Master Lee's intent to have got so far as this without coming to an understanding with his prisoner, but the wind had been stronger than his intentions, and he had been compelled to run before it and to head to southward until its fury should abate. Thus it fell out, and all marvelously to Master Lionel's advantage, as you shall see, that the skipper was forced to wait until they stood along the coast of Portugal, but well out to sea, for the coast of Portugal was none too healthy just then to English seamen, before commanding Sir Oliver to be hailed into his presence. In the cramped quarters of the cabin in the poop of the little vessel sat her captain at a greasy table, over which a lamp was swinging faintly to the gentle heave of the ship. He was smoking a foul pipe, whose fumes hung heavily upon the air of that little chamber, and there was a bottle of nonce at his elbow. To him, sitting thus in state, was Sir Oliver introduced, his wrists still pinioned behind him. He was haggard and hollow-eyed, and he carried a week's growth of beard on his chin. Also his garments were still in disorder from the struggle he had made when taken, and from the fact that he had been compelled to lie in them ever since. Since his height was such that it was impossible for him to stand upright in that low-ceilinged cabin, a stool was thrust forward for him by one of the ruffians of Lee's crew, who had hailed him from his confinement beneath the hatchway. He sat down quite listlessly, and stared vacantly at the skipper. Master Lee was somewhat discomposed by this odd calm, when he had looked for angry outbursts. He dismissed the two seamen who fetched Sir Oliver, and when they had departed and closed the cabin door, he addressed his captive. "Sir Oliver," said he, stroking his red beard, "you've been most foully abused." The sunshine filtered through one of the horn windows, and beat full upon Sir Oliver's expressionless face. "It was not necessary, you knave, to bring me hither to tell me so much," he answered. "Quite so," said Master Lee, "but I have something more to add. You'll be thinking that I ha' done you a disservice. There ye wrong me. Through me you are brought to know true friends from secret enemies. Henceforward ye'll know which to trust and which to mistrust." Sir Oliver seemed to rouse himself a little from his passivity, stimulated to spite himself by the impudence of this rogue. He stretched a leg and smiled sourly. "You'll end by telling me that I am in your debt," said he. "You'll end by saying so yourself," the captain assured him. "D'ye know what I was bidden do with you?" "Faith, I neither know nor care," was a surprising answer, wearily delivered. "If it is for my entertainment that you propose to tell me, I beg you'll spare yourself the trouble." It was not an answer that helped the captain. He pulled at his pipe a moment. "I was bidden," said he presently, "to carry you to Barbary and sell you there into the service of the Moors. That I might serve you, I made believe to accept this task." "God's death," swore Sir Oliver. "You carry make-believe to an odd length. The weather's been against me. It were no intention o' mine to ha' come so far south with you, but we've been driven by the gale that is overpast, and so that ye'll promise to bear no plaint against me, and to make good some of the loss I'll make by going out of my course, and missing a cargo that I would have, I'll put about and fetch you home again within a week." Sir Oliver looked at him and smiled grimly. "Now, what a rogue are you that can keep faith with none?" he cried. "First you take money to carry me off, and then you bid me pay you to carry me back again. Ye wrong me, sir, I vow ye do. I can keep faith when honest men employ me, and ye should know it, Sir Oliver, but who keeps faith with rogues is a fool, and that I am not, as ye should also know. I ha' done this thing that a rogue might be revealed to you and thwarted, as well as that I might make some little profit out of the ship o' mine. I am frank with ye, Sir Oliver. I ha' had some £200 in money and trinkets from your brother. Give me the like, and—" But now of a sudden Sir Oliver's listlessness was all dispelled. It fell from him like a cloak, and he sat forward, wide awake and with some show of anger even. "How do you say?" he cried on a sharp, high note. The captain stared at him, his pipe neglected. "I say that if so be as ye'll pay me the same sum which your brother paid me to carry you off." "My brother?" roared the knight. "Do you say my brother?" "I said your brother." "Master Lionel?" The other demanded still. "What other brothers have you?" quoth Master Lee. There fell a pause, and Sir Oliver looked straight before him, his head sunken a little between his shoulders. "Let me understand," he said at length. "Do you say that my brother Lionel paid you money to carry me off? In short, that my presence aboard this foul hulk of yours is due to him? Whom else had ye suspected? Or did ye think that I did it for my own personal diversion? Answer me," bellowed Sir Oliver, writhing in his bonds. "I ha' answered you more than once already. Still, I tell you once again, since ye are slow to understand it, that I was paid a matter of £200 by your brother, Master Lionel Tressilian, to carry you off to Barbary and there sell you for a slave. Is that plain to you? As plain as it is false." "You lie, you dog." "Softly, softly," quoth Master Lee good-humoredly. "I say you lie." Master Lee considered him a moment. "Sets the wind so?" said he at length, and without another word he rose and went to a sea chest ranged against the wooden wall of the cabin. He opened it and took thence a leather bag. From this he produced a handful of jewels. He thrust them under Sir Oliver's nose. "Haply," said he, "you'll be acquainted with some of them. They was given me to make up the sum, since your brother had not the whole £200 in coin. Take a look at them." Sir Oliver recognized a ring and a long pear-shaped pearl earring that had been his brother's. He recognized a medallion that he himself had given Lionel 2 years ago, and so, one by one, he recognized every trinket placed before him. His head drooped to his breast, and he sat thus a while like a man stunned. "My God!" he groaned miserably at last. "Who, then, is left of me? Lionel, too. Lionel." A sob shook the great frame. 2 tears slowly trickled down that haggard face, and were lost in the stubble of beard upon his chin. "I am accursed," he said. Never without such evidence could he have believed this thing. From the moment that he was beset outside the gates of Godolphin Court, he had conceived it to be the work of Rosamund, and his listlessness was begotten the thought that she could have suffered conviction of his guilt and her hatred of him to urge her to such lengths as these. Never for an instant had he doubted the message delivered him by Lionel, that it was Mistress Rosamund who summoned him, and just as he believed himself to be going to Godolphin Court in answer to her summons, so did he conclude that the happening there was a real matter to which he had bidden him, a thing done by her contriving, her answer to his attempt on the previous day to gain speech with her, her manner of ensuring that such an impertinence should never be repeated. This conviction had been gall and wormwood to him. It had drugged his very senses, reducing him to a listless indifference to any fate that might be reserved him. Yet it had not been so bitter a draught as this present revelation. After all, in her case there were some grounds for the hatred that had come to take the place of her erstwhile love. But in Lionel's what grounds were possible? What motives could exist for such an action as this, other than a monstrous, a loathly egoism which desired perhaps to ensure that the blame for the death of Peter Godolphin should not be shifted from the shoulders that were unjustly bearing it, and the accursed desire to profit by the removal of the man who had been brother, father, and all else to him? He shuddered in sheer horror. It was incredible, and yet beyond a doubt it was true. For all the love which he had showered upon Lionel, for all the sacrifices of self which he had made to shield him, this was Lionel's return. Were all the world against him, he still must have believed Lionel true to him, and in that belief must have been enheartened a little. And now, his sense of loneliness, of utter destitution, overwhelmed him. Then slowly of his sorrow resentment was begotten, and being begotten it grew rapidly until it filled his mind and whelmed in its turn all else. He threw back his great head, and his bloodshot, gleaming eyes fastened upon Captain Lee, who, seated now upon the sea chest, was quietly observing him and waiting patiently until he should recover the wits which this revelation had scattered. "Master Lee," said he, "what is your price to carry me home again to England?" "Why, Sir Oliver," said he, "I think the price I was paid to carry you off will be a fair one. The one would wipe out t'other, as it were." "You shall have twice the sum when you land me on Trefusis Point again," was the instant answer. The captain's little eyes blinked, and his shaggy red eyebrows came together in a frown. Here was too speedy an acquiescence. There must be guile behind it, or he knew naught of the ways of men. "What mischief are ye brooding?" he sneered. "Mischief, man? To you." Sir Oliver laughed hoarsely. "God's light, knave, d'ye think I consider you in this matter, or d'ye think I've room in my mind for such petty resentments together with that other?" It was the truth. So absolute was the bitter sway of his anger against Lionel that he could give no thought to this rascally seaman's share in the adventure. "Will ye give me your word for that?" "My word? Pshaw, man, I have given it already. I swear that you shall be paid the sum I've named the moment you set me ashore again in England. Is that enough for you? Then cut me these bonds, and let us make an end of my present condition. Faith, I am glad to deal with so sensible a man. Ye take it in the proper spirit. Ye see that what I ha' done I ha, but done in the way of my calling, that I am but a tool, and that what blame there be belongs to them which hire me to this deed. Aye, you're but a tool, a dirty tool, wetted with gold. No more. 'Tis admitted. Cut me these bonds, a God's name. I'm weary o' being trussed like a capon." The captain drew his knife, crossed to Sir Oliver's side, and slashed his bonds away without further word. Sir Oliver stood up so suddenly that he smote his head against the low ceiling of the cabin, and so sat down again at once. And in that moment from without and above there came a cry which sent the skipper to the cabin door. He flung it open, and so let out the smoke and let in the sunshine. He passed out onto the poop deck, and Sir Oliver, conceiving himself at liberty to do so, followed him. In the waist below, a little knot of shaggy seamen were crowding to the larboard bulwarks, looking out to sea. On the forecastle there was another similar assembly, all staring intently ahead and towards the land. They were off Cape Roque at the time, and when Captain Lee saw by how much they had lessened their distance from shore since last he had conned the ship, he swore ferociously at his mate who had charge of the wheel. Ahead of them away on their larboard bow and in line with the mouth of the Tagus from which she had issued, and where not a doubt but she had been lying in wait for such stray craft as this, came a great tall-masted ship, equipped with top-gallants, running well-nigh before the wind with every foot of canvas spread. Close-hauled as was the Swallow, and with her topsails and mizzen reefed, she was not making more than one knot to the Spaniard's 5. For that she was a Spaniard was beyond all doubt judging by the haven when she issued. "Luff-a-lee," bawled the skipper, and he sprang to wheel, thrusting the mate aside with a blow of his elbow that almost sent him sprawling. "'Twas yourself set the course," the fellow protested. "Thou lubberly fool," roared the skipper. "I bade thee keep the same distance from shore. If the land comes jetting out to meet us, are we to keep straight on until we pile her up?" He spun the wheel round in his hands and turned her down the wind. Then he relinquished the helm to the mate again. "Hold her thus," he commanded, and bellowing orders as he went, he heaved himself down the companion to see them executed. Men sprang to the ratlins to obey him and went swarming aloft to let out the reefs of the topsails. Others ran astern to do the like by the mizzen, and soon they had her leaping and plunging through the green water with every sheet unfurled, racing straight out to sea. From the poop Sir Oliver watched the Spaniard. He saw her veer a point or so to starboard, heading straight to intercept them, and he observed that although this maneuver brought her fully a point nearer to the wind than the Swallow, yet, equipped as she was with half as much canvas again as Captain Lee's piratical craft, she was gaining steadily upon them none the less. The skipper came back to the poop and stood there moodily watching that other ship's approach, cursing himself for having sailed into such a trap, and cursing his mate more fervently still. Sir Oliver meanwhile took stock of so much of the Swallow's armament as was visible and wondered what like were those on the main deck below. He dropped a question on that score to the captain, dispassionately, as though he were no more than an indifferently interested spectator, and with never a thought to his position aboard. "Should I be racing her afore the wind, if I is properly equipped?" growled Lee. "Am I the man to run before a Spaniard? As it is, I do no more than lure her well away from land." Sir Oliver understood and was silent thereafter. He observed the boatswain and his mate staggering the waist under loads of cutlasses and small arms which they stacked in a rack about the mainmast. Then the gunner, a swarthy, massive fellow, stark to the waist with a faded scarf tied turban-wise about his head, leapt up the companion to the brass carronade on the larboard quarter, followed by a couple of his men. Master Lee called up the boatswain, bade him take the wheel, and dispatched the mate forward to the forecastle, where another gun was being prepared for action. Thereafter followed a spell of racing, the Spaniard ever lessening the distance between them, and the land dropping astern until it was no more than a hazy line above the shimmering sea. Suddenly from the Spaniard appeared a little cloud of white smoke, and the boom of a gun followed, and after came a splash of cables length ahead of the Swallow's bows. Linstock in hand, the brawny gunner on the poop stood ready to answer them when the word should be given. From below came the gunner's mate to report himself ready for action on the main deck and to receive his orders. Came another shot from the Spaniard, again across the bows of the Swallow. "'Tis a clear invitation to heave to," said Sir Oliver. The skipper snarled in his fiery beard. "She has a longer range than most Spaniards," said he, "but I'll not waste powder yet for all that. We've none to spare." Scarcely had he spoken when a third shot boomed. There was a splintering crash overhead, followed by a sough and a thud, as the maintop mast came hurtling to the deck, and in its fall stretched a couple of men in death. Battle was joined, it seemed, yet Captain Lee did nothing in a hurry. "Hold there!" he roared to the gunner who swung his linstock at that moment in preparation. She was losing way as a result of that curtailment of her mainmast, and the Spaniard came on swiftly now. At last the skipper accounted her near enough, and gave the word with an oath. The Swallow fired her first and last shot in that encounter. After the deafening thunder of it, and through the cloud of suffocating smoke, Sir Oliver saw the high forecastle of the Spaniard rent open. Master Lee was cursing his gunner for having aimed too high. Then he signaled to the mate to fire the culverin of which he had charge. That second shot was to be the signal for the whole broadside from the main deck below, but the Spaniard anticipated them. Even as the skipper of the Swallow signaled, the whole side of the Spaniard burst into flame and smoke. The Swallow staggered under blow, recovered an instant, then listed ominously to larboard. "Hell!" roared Lee. "She's bilging!" And Sir Oliver saw the Spaniard standing off again, as if satisfied with what she had done. The mate's gun was never fired, nor was the broadside from below. Indeed, that sudden list had set the muzzles pointing to the sea. Within 3 minutes of it, they were on a level with the water. The Swallow had received her death blow, and she was settling down, satisfied that she could do no further harm. The Spaniard luffed and hove to, awaiting the obvious result, and intent upon picking up what slaves she could demand the galleys of his Catholic Majesty on the Mediterranean. Thus the fate intended Sir Oliver by Lionel was to be fulfilled, and it was to be shared by Master Lee himself, which had not been at all in that venal fellow's